Has everyone had a chance to review the Finance Committee meeting notes, and would like to move that we approve the approval of the minutes dispensing with a reading?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Harden? Second by Mrs. Smith. Okay, any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by the same sign. That's 5-0. Approving the minutes. Okay, and we're gonna go a little bit out of order tonight, but we might need the whole time. But maybe we can finish a little bit early. So I'm going to take the second item, 020520. Request to consider adopting a donated sick leave policy for city employees. Coming to us from the mayor, Ms. Salter, Mr. Burgett, and the Employee Benefit Committee. So I sent out the samples and notes, and Mr. Yates is here. He was chair of the Employee Benefit Committee, so he was here. He has a conference call, so I was going to put him up first. Would you like to give a report from your committee, Mr. Yates? And if you come up here to the microphone, I guess, or.
Yeah, this is a policy we're really proud of because of two things. It's fair and equitable, and it will replace every disparagement policy we have throughout the whole city. So now there'll be one sick leave bank policy for everybody.
Perfect.
The second thing we really like about it is this is initiated by the employee, but has to be submitted by the department head. So that puts some control on who can actually come into the policy. Then after that, then it has to be approved by the sick leave bank committee, which represents 3 people that first of every year, those 3 people will be voted on by a blind ballot to see who works in the committee. If there ever is a committee member, that has to get sick leave, then JJ will step in the place to do the final approval. And this was a lot of hard work, and I think it's really fair, and it'll help the employees. Sometimes I don't know if you've ever been, I never have been really sick and have to. You run out of all your sick leave. You'd have to run out of all your sick leave, all your regular leave, any kind of leave you had would have to be dispensed before this would even come into place. If somebody's already went that far, they really need help. And so this is a good vehicle to help them with. It was not just the Employee Benefits Committee that put it together, but actually we worked in conjunction with all the department heads. So every department head has an input into this, and they know if it gets approved that it replaces whatever they're using. Is there any questions or?
I have a question, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
The committee that's being set up within the 3-person committee, is that made up of strictly employees?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just want to be sure about that. Thank you.
Yes, sir. It's strictly employees.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And I want to make sure that I'm clear. The document that we sent out today, Ms. Salter, we took what the committee, and then you and Mr. Burgett had made a couple of notes, right?
Yeah, the only suggestion or possibility to bring your attention, I think, James, was if somebody that's on the sick leave bank committee has to step off or leaves the city, it is said that the sick leave committee would appoint the person back in. And so we had a suggestion of, should we think about letting the department head put that person in, since the department head had originally put him on the committee. But it's not a sick point either way. It was just another suggestion.
I thought it was in there just to, that they would be voted back in by blind ballot, was that what it was?
Yeah, at the end of the second.
Like,
Yeah,
it said
yeah.
if somebody had to leave, that the committee would vote on who said on the,
Oh, yeah, we said it by secret ballot. If the department head of the member that had to leave wants to appoint, I don't see any problem with that. We just need to have to make a, just have 3 people on the approval committee is all. But yeah, there's no problem with that.
I mean, it was just another thought of, okay, how the committee originally came to be was when the mayor started back up, was each department had nominated the person from their
Okay.
department to go sit on the committee. So it was like, okay, if somebody has to leave, it was that the committee could vote by ballot for a new employee to take the place.
Right.
Not for just the bank, but I think to be on the committee. And we were saying, what about just letting the department head have a chance again to put somebody in their department back on it? That was the only suggestion.
Mrs. Smith,
Yes.
I thought you looked like you had a question. Okay, okay.
And the other thing was, we ran this by Crenshaw, Dr. Crenshaw of the Employee Personnel Board, and he was in favor. He didn't see anything in this that would, conflict with anything the Personnel Board's doing. So that was good to have a thumbs up from him.
Yeah.
Our first policy did not get that.
All right, so there are questions. We sent out a few things, but the recommendation, I think, from Ms. Salter and from the Employee Benefits Committee was for the document I sent out today with that one change that was recommended, the department head.
And this would replace the police department's policy, but
It-
not the Board of Education, and it wouldn't have anything to do with the library, correct? Is that right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Because they have their own separate boards, correct?
Well, we're looking for a policy that would pertain to all city employees.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Kendrick?
There was an act passed in 2012 that controls the boards of education. It's a state act. Cities are not included in that, but
Okay.
you wouldn't be able to modify it. That act simply says it applies only for catastrophic injury and for paternity.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you would not be able to change. Their act is, their legal policy is controlled by that act.
Okay.
2012 act.
Actually, the library department head was part of the creation of this, too.
But it would be up to the board. I think they submitted somebody who could be on this, the library did, but it would be up to them if they wanted to adopt our policy of their own. Berkeley, under Park, can do the same thing, but he usually chooses to follow what the city does. But even though Debbie has sent somebody to participate, I don't know whether they would adopt ours or not. But they're not personnel board either, so.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Higginbotham.
And you may have mentioned this, and I apologize if you did. I was trying to scan through it. I had to print it right before I got over here because I didn't have an opportunity to look at it. So why 144 hours? I mean, why was that number chosen as opposed to 180 hours or 120 hours? Was there some thinking is?
I don't recall exactly, but it had something to do with the way the fire department, they're a little different than us. There was something to cover, make sure we covered every department.
They get 10.64 because they're 24 hours. If we get 8 hours of leave a month, they get 10.64. So that made the equivalent conversion, I believe, to their.
Right.
Because they earn at a different rate because they're 24 hours.
I see. Okay. Thank
Except
you.
for the people that work upstairs, like the admin people, they earn 8. But if you're on shift, you earn 10.64 instead of 8.
All right. Good answer. Good answer.
Good
And
answer.
the other thing this does also, it converts like if somebody at, say, a 38 pay rate gave money in and then somebody took out at like a 12 or whatever, there's going to be a big disparage difference in the pay. So this converts the hours into hourly pay. And so like if somebody made, $20 an hour opposed to somebody that made $5, that'd be 4 hours for them. Does that make sense?
Right.
Hey, can I ask James a question real quick?
Sure.
Because maybe I'm confused on this one. If this is how this works, we don't really need a change. Is this how it works? If the member of the sick leave bank committee, which is 3 people from the committee, if they resign or the department head removes them, then you're saying that by secret ballot, the committee will appoint the next person to serve on the 3. But who's going to replace the person on the committee? Does that make sense that left? That's why I was saying the department head would need to put another person back.
Absolutely. That would be totally different than the sick leave bank policy.
Okay.
Because when we do lose a member for any reason, it's always appointed by the department head.
Okay, so the
It's their
secret ballot is
discretion.
just to put the person of the committee on the bank, not to put, we thought it was, we read it as putting somebody, y'all voting who from the department got to be put on the committee, but that's not what that is.
No.
Okay.
This would be like somebody that's actually a part of the personnel, part of the employee benefit. Just getting tasked with
So like, say the person that had to leave that was on the sick leave bank was Park and Rec, and he was on the bank and he had to leave or got pulled back, then y'all are gonna put a secret ballot to put another person on the 3, but Berkeley's still gonna have a chance to put somebody back on the committee, because that person.
Yeah, we can't cover every department on the committee anyway.
Well, I know that, but I'm talking about
Yeah.
the main committee, okay.
Yeah, so it would be just, he would appoint somebody and then
But I don't
the
think we need to change that.
employee
I think it's okay
benefits
with it.
would,
So you're okay with the way it's worded?
yeah.
We read it to be that they would select the person from the department. They're just still selected by ballot from the committee who sits on the
Right.
sick leave bank. So, yeah, that's all.
Okay. So the recommendation is as it was written, without any change on that second paragraph, I guess. I guess that's the current recommendation made from the committee with Ms. Salter's changes. So is it something we'd like to review for a little while and then look at it next time, or do you want to go ahead and act on it and review it this week for council? Up to you. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like an opportunity to look it over. I know
Sure.
it came in late this afternoon, but I have not had a chance to read it carefully. I just scanned it. And
Okay.
I'm sure it's fine, but if it's not urgent, if it's urgent.
No, we've been trying to get it done for a while, so.
Right, well, I did not detect
Yeah.
it as being urgent.
It's no, but, well, no, we're not under a time commitment, but we would like to get it passed as soon as possible. But I did send y'all the Board of Educations, because Mr. Hartman
Yeah.
asked about it. And this one, I don't even know if you knew that when y'all were developing, it's real similar to what the Board of Education has. They have the same kind of sick leave bank that you buy into and pay back. There's a little bit more members of the board. So anyway, I sent that to y'all as well. But this one's gonna be different than what the police department's been using.
Okay.
Yeah, we looked at several different leave bank policies and sort of came up with this as different than any of them.
Mhm.
But it
Okay, why don't we do
seemed
this?
to
Let's-
really meet what we needed.
Okay, let's carry it over for review. If there are if there are questions that come up, feel free and reach out to Mr. Yates or anyone. We'll try to get it answered. And if you have other recommendations on additional changes or anything we're missing here, please let us know, and we'll do that. So with that, we'll carry over without objection 020520. Thank you, Mr. Yates.
Thanks,
You don't have to
Thank you.
stay for the whole meeting.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move right up to the item we skipped, 160220, consideration for lighting for 700 block of Windsor Drive. This was actually great news today that we
Yeah,
received
yeah.
from Mr. Hambley. So I need to find the email. Mr. Burgett, do you have that handy?
He sent it to us this afternoon.
Yeah.
I think it was $118.
It was
Yeah, I know.
100.
Let me see if I have it here. Okay, so what, and this would be coming out of the 7-cent gas tax?
Right. Yes, sir.
Okay,
3 lights, rate of $118.74 a month, so it costs $1424.88 annually.
okay. And I confirm no installation charges, that's all included in that, so I think that's good news for Ward 5, so.
We'll take it.
So I would assume.
We do have 3 lights out that we've got to work on, but
He knows about 2 of them. What's the third one?
we got one right by your house. We've got one where, on Devon where they're building the house, and then we got one at,
That's right. He's got, I've got.
at Norfolk, so
Mr. Jones?
I want anything I can get, Peter.
I'm going to move to approve the 3 lights at 700 Windsor.
Okay. Okay, moved by Mrs. Smith, second by Mr. Higginbotham for $118.74 for the 3 lights monthly out of Fund 047 cent gas tax. Any other questions about that? Thank Mr. Hamley for his hard work with Alabama Power on that. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by the same sign. That's 5-0. That passes. Thank you. Okay. 030720, request to consider amendments to FY 1920 budgets coming to us from Mr. Burgett. This came this afternoon as well. Do we have it should be in front of you, the budget amendments. A lot of these are just line item transfers, as you can see. All of them are line item transfers, so there's no new money being requested. But if there are any questions, we can entertain those and answer those.
Mr. Jones, I just had a quick question. What's the senior citizens grant?
Senior
There's,
citizens.
in the grants fund, there's a transfer from intergovernment revenue to senior citizens grant.
That's the meal plan.
Oh,
The senior meal plan.
gotcha,
We're just basically a pass-through, but we pay and then the county reimburses us.
gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Thames, second by Mr. Higginbotham. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign, 5-0. That passes. All right, the next one is 040720. Request to consider accepting reimbursement of expenditures related to COVID-19 from the Coronavirus Relief Fund under the CARES Act, received on behalf of the City of Homewood by Jefferson County from Mr. Burgett. This is very, very helpful. I'd requested we reach out to find what we can do under the CARES Act. There's a lot of funding that's available. There's an employee retention tax credit that Mr. Burgett checked on. That was not available to municipalities, but this is 1.17 million that is available in COVID relief to Homewood, and our staff has been doing a exceptional job of marking expenditures that are COVID related, and they did that early on, and that is really going to be key to all of this. I mean, when you think about how much we've had to have Trust Building come in here and do, what do? They spray everything and
They have a fogger that.
a fogger, and I mean, all these things are related to COVID relief. It's related to any kind of loss of productivity for employees who might have had to, work from home, things like that. So there's a myriad of items, but I believe we can immediately start receiving reimbursement for these funds that have already been designated to the City of Homewood. Yes, sir.
Mr. Jones, I was just saying, this afternoon, Councilor Gwaltney and Andrus and Wyatt and I met with some representatives from the Health Department, UAB, Dr. Cleveland, about setting up a testing site at Wygan. And, I'm sorry, Waldron. Wygan's the practice field.
Waldron's.
And while there's not going to be a great expense to the city, those expenses that we will incur for tents and tables and chairs, things like that.
Right.
They are most likely reimbursable under this as well.
That is great news.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're going to shoot for early August to try and test as many Homewood residents prior to school starting as possible.
Okay, great. Okay, and then there was a letter that had gone out that provided more detail from the county, but what's needed from the city at this point, Mr. Kendrick, we just need to adopt a resolution.
There is a sub-grant agreement that the county has proposed to cities, I know of about 6 city attorneys, and I've been talking, there's some issues with that. I'd like to be able to have some time to work out with the county. We don't think some of the language should be in there.
Okay.
And there's discussions with the county about that. So we'll work on that this week, and hopefully we can have it resolved so I can recommend that to you. But that might be an issue that I might ask you to hold up until we can get that agreement worked out.
Well, would it help to carry it over one time, or should we go ahead and proceed?
We'll have the resolution if we can get the
Okay.
subject agreement worked out. If there's an issue, then I'll tell you at the next meeting that we still need some more time.
Okay,
I'm
Mr.
hopeful that we get it resolved.
Okay, Mr. Wright?
Mr. Jones, so is this is reimbursement of expenditures, so it's a matter of 1.17 set aside for us, and then anything that falls within the appropriate category, we send in for reimbursement up to that level?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the reimbursement is dictated by the federal act, what can be reimbursed. The amount of money was divided, I guess, by the county based on the population. I don't know how they came up with that number, but that money came directly to them because they're a
So it's-
governmental agency.
So it's clearly not something that just rolls into the general fund?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Sounds good. Like that. That was a nice idea.
I would like to,
Only be used very specific.
We can't throw you a retirement party, Mr. Wright, for
I would like to
council.
amend the CARES Act to provide for that.
Okay.
But we already have a lot of invoices that have been paid for that, so we're having people go back and mark it so that when this is accepted, all that we can go back and file for reimbursement under it, because a lot of them we've already paid for the
So we
cleaning.
can get reimbursed by December 31 of this year for additional expenses, so this is not
Right.
going to be a once.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
one-time
this is
event.
until December 31st that we can get reimbursement. That's right.
Ms. Salter, is someone keeping up with all that? I mean, is there someone in your department that is focused on that?
Well, Robert and I and JJ had a department head meeting the other day, and some of the bills that we've been, in my department have been coming in, because we've had to call and get the Trustity, the fogging in several places when we've had people
Right.
test positive. And so I went back and marked those, and Robert's got his accounts payable person, Melanie, she's keeping a spreadsheet, and then a lot of them, the departments have already turned in, and we won't be easy for us to find them, so they're going back and identifying them.
Okay.
And send them to us so that we can compile a master sheet, so that when we start being able to file reimbursement, you know, they're helping us identify them, because a lot of them have already been paid.
good.
Some of
Okay.
it's going to be time, salaries, and time, and they're going to have to get us that information as well, so we're going to have to work with the departments to make sure we go back and catch all of it that we paid in the past.
Okay.
Okay. Well, is there a motion to approve the acceptance of the reimbursement of expenditures under COVID pending Mr. Kendrick's approval and creation of document?
Britt said move, and I'll second it.
Yes. Okay, okay.
Second.
Okay, so Mr. Thames and Mrs. Smith made the second. Any other discussion, questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the same sign? Okay, 5-0, that passes. And our last item, 110720, request to authorize the mayor to sign supplemental to the original contract ALDUT project CMAC TA 15 for 18th Street improvements. We sent this out. This came from Mr. Pugh. I would like some kind of explanation of why we have this expenditure. I don't completely understand why we have additional money requested after we had budgeted this, and, I mean, this is a large project, but I wasn't looking for a change order.
I totally understand. In the submittal documents that I believe you've all got, in the letter, there's a narrative there, and it explains that Tillman Consulting, who's doing all the negotiation work on the right-of-way, he says, during negotiations, it was determined that the property owners for Track 2 and 6 were no longer willing to donate. That really should say they were not willing to donate. It wasn't that they were at one time, but they're not. It was believed or suspected or hoped at one time that they would. Those two tract owners are George Barber and Jerry Lewis. It turns out that after being asked, would you be willing to donate property, they wouldn't hear it. And when asked if they would waive an appraisal and simply accept an offer, they didn't want to do that either. So by state law, we have to do that. We have to appraise the property that we want to take for right-of-way and offer them that money for it. Now, at that time, they can choose to still donate it if they want to, but it doesn't sound like it's heading that way. So those two appraisals are part of it. Then moving on down, Tract 3 will now require a full appraisal. That's Roby Mann's. What happened was GMC's surveyor went out and conducted a survey of that property. When that survey was shown to the owner of Roby Mann's, he produced a survey that was much, much older that was off by a few feet from the new survey. Given that, ALDOT and following ALDOT's requirements, whenever that happens, a full resurvey has to be redone and a full reappraisal or full appraisal rather of the property has to be done. These are unfortunate ALDOT rules that we're sort of bound by. So if you turn over to the next to last page, you'll see a breakdown of those expenses. I believe there's also a chart in here where Mr. Tillman, I believe it may be on the last page, where Mr. Tillman, yeah, it's on the last page. Mr. Tillman talks about tracks 1 through 8, summary chart, cost of his appraisals. So somewhere in this several-page document, you'll see a breakdown of everything, dollar for dollar, if you want to see that. But it all totals up to a request for an additional, I believe, what, 16,000 is what? Yeah, 16,547.
All right, cool.
Is the city responsible for the full amount, or are we reimbursed 80% of that?
We will have to pay it, but we can submit for reimbursement, yes, sir.
All right, any questions for Mr. Pugh?
Yeah, I've got one on the 16,547. Does that include what we're going to pay George Barber and that, I mean, we don't know those numbers at this point,
We
correct?
won't know those numbers until the actual appraisals come back.
Right.
And at that point, there can be some negotiation. I mean, it may be that George Barber won't necessarily demand to be paid the full dollar amount. You know, I'm just saying,
Right.
it can
I got
happen.
it. He owns the little barber shop is what he owns.
Right, that's the parcel we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Those two parcels, that's a temporary construction easement, it's not permanent.
The ALDOT sets those at $12 a foot.
All right,
That's the cost of temporary construction.
Is that $12 a linear foot?
Square foot,
Square foot. Yep.
Okay,
square feet, how many square feet you're taking.
wow.
I invited Keith to come tonight to speak to this, but he was not able to make it, so he would be a better source of information about this, and I'll be glad to address that with him if necessary.
If that's the number they use, I
Yeah, I
don't know if
was not
that's a
aware of that.
statewide number or,
That's the ALDOT number for
Mr. Pugh,
temporary construction.
Okay.
Mr. Pugh, can you follow up with Mr. Tillman and confirm if that's the case? And that
Yes,
would
sir.
help us move forward.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, well, I guess we need to get some additional information then. Is a thought to carry it over to gather additional information on this? And
What information are we looking for? I mean, the right-of-way itself is budgeted, that's in the project. This extra amount is just for these appraisals. Just curious, any more things up?
So part of the 16,547 is the cost of the appraisals that we're going to be doing.
It's right-of-way map, tracks, sketches, and deeds is what it's under.
If it would be helpful, and I don't know if y'all are willing to do this, I can call Mr. Tillman right now, and we can get him on speaker, and you can ask him. Is that something you'd be willing to entertain? Let me grab my phone.
So what's the reimbursement? It's $3,300.
Well, and bear in mind, that expenditure is not, this, we're approving the expenditure up to, it's not guaranteed that it will be expended.
Hey, Mandel, this is Wyatt Pugh. I've got you on speakerphone with the Finance Committee.
Sorry, buddy.
And they have some clarification request about these not negotiations, but appraisals that need to be done on these temporary construction easements.
Yes.
I guess that's track 2 and 6. Isn't it true that AlDOT sets the number on those per linear foot? Is that, am I understanding that correctly? Or per square foot, excuse me?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the question. AlDOT doesn't set anything. There's a procedure for calculating the temporary construction easement but you have to go through the process of valuing the land. And I think, I don't remember what it was on that one, but I've already reviewed the appraisal on 2, and I think it was, here's the process, if this is what you're asking. You value the land, and you come up with a value for the portion that is in the TCE. Then you apply an interest rate to it as a fair rental that would be paid over a 3-year period, but you pay that all up front at one time. So with that, there is a discount, and it's discounted at an 8% interest rate, which would amount to, it's a factor of like 2.7833 multiplied times the rental for 3 years. Does that make sense?
Years.
Does that make sense?
No, not really.
All right, let me explain it another way. Just say the rent is $100 a year, all right, over 3 years. So that's $300. That would be the total amount that you're going to pay up front. So you multiply that, you discount back that annual rate at 8%, and it comes up to a factor of 2.7833, not 3 times the $100 a year rent, but something less than that. It's discounted at 8% per year.
Okay, so am I understanding correctly that an appraisal must be done? That's part of the process?
Oh, yeah, that's the first step in the whole process.
Okay, I think that's what,
And this additional money would include the appraisals, right?
this additional money that's being requested, that includes the appraisals, correct?
That includes everything. Now, the only thing that, if you have to understand, is that just like with Roby Mans, if any of these go to court, then you would have to, maybe not at, possibly not at probate, but if it went on to circuit court, for sure, and that would depend on what the lawyer says, what his preference is, you would have to have those done a total before and after. You have to weigh that in when you start negotiating with these people. There's not going to be as high numbers like number 2. The offer, now I'm operating from memory, but I think it was like $8,000 or something. And, I doubt that Jared Lewis, based on my conversations with him, is unless he strikes some other deals with y'all on some other property, that he will accept $8,000. But it's going to cost several $1,000s to go to even probate, so you've got some room to negotiate, and it's not a lot of dollars. Now if you took that one to circuit court, for example, it could cost $15,000. When you got it all said and done, that's typically that's a good number. It could be 12.5, it could be 20, but, somewhere in that $15,000 range. So you've got some room and reasons to negotiate in there if you have to before you go through all of that. I just don't see a lot of that here. I think that most of these are going to settle. I think Ed's Pet World may be a problem. I don't think the furniture store, after meeting with those folks, I think that's going to be an easy task. I really think George Barber is going to be easy, but they just would have. That was one that surprised me. They wouldn't have any part of a donation or waiving the appraisal. I think the post office will probably be okay. I think there's probably going to be some cost to cure involved in the post office deal because of the mailbox issue, but I think that can all be worked out.
Okay.
So I think most of them are going to be fairly simple, but there's 2 or 3 of them that are going to be, at least a couple that are going to be real pains
Sure.
to deal with.
Did y'all have any further questions about his process?
No.
Anybody have other questions?
No. No.
Okay.
Thank you, Mandel.
Okay, one thing I would point out on the ones where you have temporary construction easement, the appraiser still has to consider, are there any possible damages due to this? You can't pay for loss of business legally. Now, they can claim it in court, but there's things but I don't see any damage to any of these properties other than possibly on Robumans. That's the only one I see so far.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, committee. This would be an amendment to the Capital Projects Fund and the Grants Fund for.
Second.
Okay, moved by Mr. Thames,
We'll have to write it up and get it.
second by Mr. Harden.
We'll have to write the amendment up and get it.
That would be $16,574. Okay, any other questions? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed by the same sign? Okay, 5-0, that passes.
Well, Robert and I'll have to write it up, because you have to show the 80% in the grants, and then out to the capital, so we can write it up and get it to you and Mr. Kendrick.
Okay, great. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Okay. The Public Works Committee meeting for July 20th at 5:30. Mr. Gwaltney?
Here.
Mr. Wolverton?
Here.
Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Wyatt? Here. And Mr. Harden?
Here.
So all present. You got a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Salter. I will entertain a motion to dispense with the reading and approval of the minutes from the July 6th committee meeting. So moved.
Second.
Wyatt and Wolverton. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Attaboy, I like it. You are eager. All right, that motion carries. Under old business, 080719, request for consideration of changes to support infrastructure installation, Councilors Gwaltney, Thames, and Wyatt. Mr. Kendrick and I have been working on some of the specifics of this item, but I would like to table this item until the foreseeable future so we can work out some of those issues and then move forward.
I'll move to table.
All right, motion to table. Was it Wyatt? McCluskey?
McCluskey, Wyatt.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Who was the second?
Mr. Wyatt.
Mr. Wyatt. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries and has been tabled. All right, moving on. 010220, request for updates on Green Springs revitalization. Director Squires, anything this week?
No, nothing new this week.
Okay. You okay with carrying this item over to keep it on the agenda?
Yes, sir.
All right, we'll carry over 010220. Under new business, 050720, request to address flooding concerns on Hillmore Drive. Counselor Wolverton.
Yes, we got a couple calls from a couple neighbors. Mr. Cobb did go out and check, so he was going to give a brief report.
Yes, sir. I met with the gentleman in the second house to the right of our new sidewalk today. We walked out there and looked at it together, then went around to the backside. And there used to be a ditch in there, but it's become overgrown. It's so thick you can't even walk in there. There's all kind of trash been put in there. So that ditch needs to be cleaned out and some brush cleared, and I believe it'll drain.
And that's kind of what he had indicated he
Right.
thought might be part of the problem, so.
I'll work with Mr. Squires and see if we can get some, I know his guys are covered up, but
Sure.
we'll work on it. And if he can't do it, we'll go out.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So, Mr. Wolverton, would you like to keep this on the agenda
Yeah,
for
let's,
updates? or
let's
do you
just
wanna
keep
go?
it on the agenda just until we have it resolved. Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. We'll carry over 050220, and Public Works is adjourned.
Public Safety Committee meeting July 20th at 5:45. Mr. McCluskey?
Here.
Mr. Thames? Here. Mr. Wolverton? Where Mr. Wolverton? I'm here. Mr. Wolverton, okay, Mr. Wyatt? Here. And Miss Andress?
Oh,
Miss
that's okay.
Andress? All present, you got a quorum.
All present here. Excellent. We don't need to dispense and read any minute, or no, actually we did, didn't we?
It's back from June.
For June 15th, that's right. Can I get a motion for a dispenser and approval?
Motion.
From Mr. Wolverton and second by Mr. Wyatt. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's approved. Okay. We'll go to new business, 170620. Request for consideration to form a joint task force of community and Homewood Police Department leadership to evaluate current policies concerning use of force and other related matters and make recommendations as needed. This comes from Councilor Mike Higginbotham. Just to catch everybody up to make sure we knew where we are, this was the item that remained on the referral agenda and was carried over and was actually approved in the last meeting. Of course, this is Mr. Higginbotham's item, so we'll let him speak to this in a minute, but I do want to remind everybody that this item before us is for consideration of a policy discussion and consideration for a task force review. There will be no discussion of any individual allegations, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Higginbotham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you taking time to speak with me a little bit earlier today to let me talk a little bit through this with you ahead of time. I've discussed this at length already because we brought this up on our referral agenda. I guess it's been 4 weeks ago now, but the idea behind this is fairly simple, I think, and straightforward. In light of the recent death of George Floyd and the general feeling, not just nationwide, but from my constituents, because I've had conversations with a number of them, that it's a good time to take a pause, just review what our policies are, make sure we feel comfortable that we have the best policies, that we are implementing the most professional and the most publicly supported policies that we can on the use of force. Since there's this national opportunity, and it's a local opportunity as well, for us to try to be better than we are now. So the idea behind this committee is for the police and the public to have a joint task force that would simply review our use of force policies. Let me say, as I have said multiple times already, number one, this is not about any particular incident or anything that's happened or in response to something that's happened. It's just, as I said, in my opinion, it's an opportunity to have this discussion. And the way I envision this happening is we would request the public to submit their names and be and considered for the task force. Maybe the task force will have about 15 people on it. The chief would point 3 or 4 or 5 of those people. The rest would be public folks that we get on there. I think it's very important to have people of color on the task force in very significant numbers. I think that community in particular is hurting and somewhat skeptical about not Homewood Police Department in particular, but the police role in our country in general. And I think this is important chance to get everybody at the table having this discussion. So, having said that, that was where I was coming from with the item I introduced. So I introduced this. The mayor, I know, has said that he is forming his own committee.
Correct.
I have talked with the mayor. I talked with him before the last council meeting for quite a while on the phone. I expressed to him at that time, as a member of council, the things that would be important to me in any committee that was established, whether it is established by this council or whether it's established by the mayor. And those things I've shared with you, Mr. Chairman, but I will share them here as well. I had a list of them, and somehow they're not in my notebook tonight when I got here, so that's my head, so bear with me as I try to remember all the points. Obviously, to me, if you're going to have a committee that's going to review things, use of force needs to be part of that discussion. If there are other things the committee wants to review, I don't have a problem with that. That's fantastic. Go review whatever you want to review, but I think we need to enumerate what the things the committee will review are. Those things need to be in writing somewhere so that, number one, the committee members know what their charge is. And secondly, the public knows what the charge of the committee is. There should be timelines. You should tell people, we want you to look at use of force. We want you to give us a report back in 3 months, 6 months, whatever that timeline might be. Because I think people need that to be able to move forward and plan how they want to, how often they need to meet, what kind of information they need to get, and what time they need to get the information. So I shared with the mayor that I thought that needed to be part of the committee structure. I also said, if you enumerate 1 thing, 3 things, 4 things that you want the committee to address, you can always have a 5th thing that says, and if there's anything else that bubbles up from the committee, they can address that too, if that's something you want to have in there. So this is part of the conversation I had with the mayor. But to me, it's very important, again, number one, that we have a very diverse committee and that it includes a broad representation of people who live in the city of Homewood. I think it's important, again, to have a charge that tells people this is what you're supposed to do on this committee. I think you lose your way if you don't have a charge. It can either turn into a complaint session or it can turn into a cheerleading session, and neither of those are very productive. We want them to look at specific things. Again, my interest being use force policy. I'm trying to think of the other things I had in the list that I discussed with the mayor. But anyway, we discussed these things at length. I don't know if the mayor's here tonight, but.
He is.
Okay.
Yep.
And he's welcome to address his perspective on the meeting, not meeting, but the phone call. So these to me were the things that I would, to feel comfortable with the committee, these are the things that I wanted to see in the committee. Oh, lastly, and most importantly, I guess, I'm sorry again, I put them on a sheet of paper that I don't know how I didn't make it in my notebook. I must have fallen out the car. I think it has to be absolutely transparent. We need to know who's on the committee. We need to know when the committee meets. The meetings of the committee need to be public. The public needs to be invited to submit their thoughts and recommendations to the committee. So at the end of the process, everybody knows what the committee's been reviewing. Everybody's had their opportunity to submit input. So these are the things I suggested to the mayor. For me, as a council person, to feel comfortable with the committee would have to do at a minimum. Am I answering the question as to what my thoughts are?
Absolutely. Well, yes. It's your item.
And so I have, I think that there are lots of people in the city who probably should be on this committee that I do not know. And so I'm not going to sit here and say, these are the 10 people, these are the 12 people, these are the people that need to be on the committee.
Sure.
I do have one person in particular I think would be an exceptional addition, regardless of what the council decides, whether the council decides it wants its own committee or they want to follow and let the mayor have his committee. That would be Jeff Walker, who is a resident of the city of Homewood. He also happens to be chair of the UAB's Criminal Justice Department and the interim chair of their social work department. He is, one of his areas of specializations is policing and use of force. It would be kind of foolhardy, in my opinion, for us to not at least invite him to participate in the process regardless of what our committee is. So that's one person I have in mind. Beyond that, I would like to see people given an opportunity to apply and be vetted and serve on the committee. And I think it should be a diverse group of people. When I say diverse, I absolutely am talking about people of color, black and brown, but I'm also talking about a diversity of the people we have in Homewood. It's fantastic to have a professor. It'd be great to have a lawyer on the committee. I think we need to have people not only that live in 4-bedroom, 3-bath houses, but also who may live in an apartment complex and may have a little bit different perspective on use of force and the policies the police follow. So that's my 3 minutes of what I think a committee should include. Obviously, it is the it's at the discretion of this Public Safety Committee, how you want to move forward. But I would just make one final observation. It is a Public Safety Committee, and I think there's a reason we put public on public safety. The public needs to be involved. They need an opportunity to know what's going on, and they need to have an opportunity to be part of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham. Mr. Mayor, would you want to come and address? I know there are things that you have already begun to work on, and just wanted to make sure that some of the stuff that Mr. Higginbotham aligns with what you guys have done already, and just kind of give us an update, because I'm assuming that's with the public safety based off of the task force that I know has already started and is, in progress right now, for the public safety to be kind of the reporting body for what your task force has done.
Yeah.
And moving forward, just as Mr. Higginbotham said, what have we done in 3 months? What have we done in 6 months? Whatever it may be, and just kind of give us, I guess, kind of your update where you are right now.
All right. Well, Mr. Higginbotham is correct in the fact that we talked probably about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So I think it's very important that we get a perspective on the timeline here. When this was placed on the agenda, I had already started talking to people who had either emailed or called me. At that point, I didn't even know Mr. Higginbotham was putting this on the agenda. To make a long story short, once that happened, I talked to our president, said that we were already addressing this. It was my understanding that it would have been dropped, and my office would have handled it. But that's not what has happened. It has gotten carried over. Then we were directed to meet with Mr. Higginbotham, and that's kind of where we are tonight. I think one thing, in that very first discussion that we had, people were asking, well, what are the names of the people that's going to be on this committee? And at that point, it was just people who had emailed me. It was people who were interested, and I felt like if they had enough interest to email or call, I'd certainly let them serve on the committee. But it wasn't a situation where we had discussed and said, okay, this is a public committee. I hope you know your name's going to be out there. And keep in perspective, too, what all had just happened and where our country was as this was happening. I had talked to our police chief at length about this. I wanted to make sure that our city was doing the things that we should be doing above and beyond. And I talked that night about us as a city achieving that gold star accreditation, to have policies and procedures in place that we could be very proud of in the city of Homewood. And I also said that I didn't think it would take us that long to achieve it. So, but this now has evolved. I'm here to take direction from whatever y'all want to do as far as who's going to handle this, whether it's going to be the council, whether it's going to be the mayor's office. I'm fine with it either way, but I do think that whatever we're going to do, we need to go ahead and do it. Personally, I preferred that it had been dropped. My office would have handled it. We would have most likely been meeting already. So I really don't know how this is, except just to be blunt, I don't know if Mr. Higginbotham is asking that the Public Safety Committee be an oversight of the mayor's office, or what we're trying to achieve here. If the goal is for us to have policies and procedures in place that people in Homewood are very proud of, we can do that without a lot of red tape. That's my feelings on it.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anybody from the committee?
I'd love to hear from Chief Ross, and then Chief Ross is here. And Counselor Smith and I had a great meeting with him right before all this sort of came up on the agenda. And I would love it if he would come and share some of the stuff that he shared with us that day. Just kind of do an overview of our use of force policy and where we are today.
Okay. Chief?
Ms. Andrus, I couldn't hear you that well, but I think you were mentioning or referencing a meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, Counselor Smith and I sat in your office with Captain Sutton and you, and I felt like it was a really rock-solid 2 hours. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what our use of force policy is. I learned about de-escalation. I learned about duty to intervene. I learned about statistics of what the makeup of our police force looks like, and I would love it if you would share that tonight.
Okay, I'll try to hit on those high points and be brief if I can. First of all, I feel like we have a very relevant and current up-to-date use of force policy that you and I and Ms. Smith looked at. I have since forwarded that policy to some of the other counselors. We took the liberty, I'm going to take this off, took the liberty of making that policy available to the public on our police department webpage, because I felt like it was important for people to know, anyone that lives here, that works here, that comes to recreate here or shop here, whatever the case is, for them to be able to see what the policy concerning this important issue is today. And we've had that available now on our website for quite some time. I hope people have had the opportunity to read it, but it does hit on many of the things and more that you mentioned already. It talks about the reverence for human life, which I think is very important. It talks about a duty to intervene that we place on our police officers, to intervene if they see force become or go from being reasonable to unreasonable or excessive, and their duty to intervene and stop that force, that unreasonable or excessive force. It addresses deadly force, and we are consistent with state law in terms of when our officers are authorized to use deadly force. It addresses warning shots and our policy concerning that. It addresses chokeholds, or the banning of chokeholds, in fact. So it addresses de-escalation. It addresses documentation of uses of force, which I think is very important for us to be able to document it and track it. I'm proud to say that the Homewood Police Department has been tracking and documenting uses of force on its own standalone report since probably the late 1990s. Chief Trucks brought that to our department back in the late 90s, as I recall. And we've been using a very similar form, a standalone use of force report, ever since. And we have the ability to track that, and it goes, it becomes a multi-tiered review of any use of force that happens within the Homewood Police Department. Anytime force is used to make an arrest, that report is made, and then that report is disseminated for a multi-tiered review. So, and just statistically, and along those lines, I'm proud to tell you that 99.5% of the arrests that are made by Homewood police officers, no force is involved in those arrests. Let me repeat that. 99.5% of the arrests made by Homewood police officers are arrests made of people that are compliant, and they do what the police officer tells them to do, and there's no force used. Only 0.5% of the arrests that we make, and this goes back to 2016 when I became your chief. From 2016 to present, 4.5 years of data, 0.5% of the arrests that we make involve the use of force. About 100,000 contacts are made by police officers every year. And of those 100,000 plus contacts that we make in the course of our duties serving this community, about 3.5% result in an arrest being made. So 3.5%, 3,600 arrests last year, I believe, 3,663 out of 100,000 plus contacts, 3.5% roughly, a little over 3.5%. And of those arrests, again, 0.5% we have to use force. And all those forces, all those uses of forces, I should say, are documented, and a multi-tiered review is conducted of those reports of usage of force within the police department. So again, just to reiterate, I feel very strongly that we have a very good policy in place. I made that policy available to Mr. Higginbotham weeks ago when he emailed me about this item that he was placing on the agenda. I've had no discussions with Mr. Higginbotham since that time, since I made that available to him. And let me just tell you how we derive our policies. It's a very measured process. Much deliberation goes into these policies with myself and my staff. Many of our policies are derived from the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the IACP. They have model and consensus policies for police departments that serve as a reference or a resource for every police department in this country. We use them very much. We rely on them very much as a resource, much like you probably do when you make an ordinance. You may use a resource like the League of Municipalities or something when you're making an ordinance. We use the IACP in a similar manner. The use of force policy that we currently have in place, along with many of our other policies, and we have a lot, are derived from that body. Again, it's a very measured and deliberate process that we engage in to make these policies, and we try to make them as current as possible. Many things can factor into these decisions of policy. Could be a Supreme Court or a court precedent that we have to maybe utilize or are forced to utilize to change our policy sometimes. Training that we undergo every year, myself, my staff, and all of the police officers might prompt us to change our policies because new training comes along. As you know, our recruits, our police recruits are trained by the state, by the Alabama Peace Officers Standards and Trainings Commission. We send our officers to Northeast Police Academy, but that training is conducted by them, and then we continue that training and require continuing education units every year over and above what the state requires, as I explained to you in our meeting. I think the average officer receives about 95 hours of training. A lot of that training is concerning the use of force. The state requires 12 hours. Our officers receive on average 95 hours. So I'm proud to stand before you tonight and let you know about these things about our police department and the way that our police department, not just since I've been the chief, going back a long time before I ever thought about being the chief, our police department has been conducted in a very progressive and professional manner. And I'm proud of our policies, I'm proud of our training, I'm proud of our record and statistics that reflect very little use of force. And keep in mind, use of force can be simply me putting my hands on you to restrain you. It doesn't mean that I'm hurting you. It doesn't mean that I'm shooting you with a weapon, a firearm, or tasing you with a taser, or using chemical spray on you. It could simply just mean me putting my hands on you to restrain you and to get you under arrest. So it can be something as minor as that to unfortunately as major as using deadly force. But that's what these reports track and document. I'll be happy to answer any question. Ms. Andrews, if you want me to reference the demographics of our department, I'll be glad to do that too, as I shared with you. We have 119 employees in the police department, about 80 sworn, 40 support personnel roughly. It fluctuates, as you might imagine, in an organization of that size. 22% of that department, of our department, is comprised of African American people. The remainder is white. We do have one Korean American on our police department. Roughly 13% of the sworn police officers are African American. 58% of our correctional staff, our jailers, as you might refer to them as, are African American. 42% of our dispatch, E911 operators are African American. 20% of our support staff, which might include our administrative workers, our custodial and maintenance staff, are African American, to include Randy Hamley's crew as well that fall under the police department. So overall, 22%. Last time I looked at the demographics of Homewood, that was considerably higher than what the demographics reflect in our population. I believe the last census that I was able to look at, African Americans made up just under 13% of our population here in Homewood. So also I'd like to point out, in the 4.5 years that I've been your chief, I have hired 42% of African Americans that work for the police department. Let me see if I can find that figure to be exact, because I don't want to misquote or be misquoted. That was a consideration that I had when I became the chief, when I started hiring and filling vacancies. Felt like it was important to look at the demographic makeup of our department as it compared to the demographic makeup of our community that we serve. And I have hired 12 of our 26 current African American employees, so 46% in the last 4.5 years have been hired by me as your police chief. So that is something that we give thought to, and we want to have an accurate representation, as Mike, I think, kind of alluded to, in the community that we serve. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions concerning any of these things or more. Patrick.
Okay. Does the committee have anything else? Ma'am, hold on 1 second. I don't know if you were there in the beginning, but we talked about this is a discussion about policy. There's no individual cases or grievances or anything like that that need to be discussed tonight. This is simply just a policy. So if you have something to, you may speak directly to Chief Ross.
I'll be happy to talk with you. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be happy to talk with you.
That's okay. I'm sorry. Well, that's why I wanted to repeat it for you. So I didn't know if you were raising your hand.
Mr. Chairman, you can't see me. I'm over here on the other side.
I can't see you from way over there. Sorry, Mr. Higginbotham. Go ahead.
Far-flung committee things, hard to see everybody.
Yep.
I like the opportunity to address a couple of things that were said.
Sure.
Since I specifically was the person that they were directed about. Number one, I have made no suggestion that the mayor's office should be under the authority of public safety, which was a comment that was made earlier. I'm talking about a committee to make recommendations. That's not members of council. That's not the mayor. That is a group of citizens, including people from the police department. That's my vision of what a committee would look like. It would be the public. Secondly, as to what Chief Ross said, he absolutely sent me a copy of the use of force policy the day after I shared with him what I was going to put on the agenda, which I did prior to putting it on, before it went on the agenda and was publicized. I said, here it is. I went into great detail in my email as to why I thought we needed to do this at this time, and said in the email, be happy to talk with you about this. I did get a copy of the use of force policy back. Be as clear as I was the first day we discussed this. This isn't about whether I think the use of force policy is where it needs to be or not. What I want to do is to open up a broader conversation and let the residents of our city have input into whether they think it's where it needs to be or not, particularly people of color. And as I pointed out before, look around this room. We have, the people that I feel need to be at the table having this discussion are not here. They are not here. And so I suggest, I didn't see you back there, ma'am. I'm sorry. I don't have. Okay, 2 Latinas we have here, so that's good. But my point is, the council as a whole that's been making these decisions, we need to broaden our perspective. We need to include people of color, whether they're Latina or whether they're African American, or we need a broader group of people involved in this discussion than the people. That's my entire intent. I don't know how to say this any more clearly, and I have said it repeatedly over and over again. This is not in response to anything that the police department has done that is wrong, that I'm upset about. It's not in response to a particular issue. It is not to suggest that Chief Ross is not doing a good job. I think we'd all acknowledge that he's done a good job as chief of police. I don't think involving the public in this discussion is a punishment. I don't think it's an attack. I think it's what we should be about as a community. And I think we're in a unique moment right now where we can have these kind of discussions. And we can make people feel included in that discussion who may not have felt included before. And that is the entirety of what I want to do here. I am not trying to bully the mayor's office, and I am not trying to impugn the police department. I have no interest in either of those things. When I introduced this weeks ago, again, didn't know there was going to be any other committee brought up, and that's great. And I have said to the mayor, here are 2 or 3 things that I would want that committee to do, and if you can tell me that the committee will do those things, I'm good. I haven't been told the committee is going to do those things. I mean, they were you saw the list, Mr. Chairman, I sent them to you. I thought that the list was very modest of the things that I would like to see the committee do. I'd like it to have some sort of call to the membership to say, these are the things you're going to be addressing. Here's the timeline in which you're going to address them. So the members will know what they're doing, number one, and the public will know what the members are doing. So there can be a broader conversation. Now, it is entirely up to the Public Safety Committee how you want to proceed. I understand that. I'm only one member of council, which I said repeatedly to the mayor during our conversation, and I said repeatedly to you today. This is just one member of council's opinion about how this should proceed from here.
Sure.
And the committee, I understand, will make this decision, and the council as a whole will make this decision because we live in a democracy and majority rules. But these are the things that I'm concerned about. These are the entire reason I brought these things up. I think I've just made it as plain as I know how to make it as to what my concerns were. And I'm interested to hear the statistics, and I appreciate them being shared, but they have nothing to do with what my concerns were. And so I'm going to just leave it there. I'm going to let the Public Safety Committee make your decision. But I did feel like I need to address those 2 things because me seeing the policy is not what this was about. I mean, as the chief's already indicated, the policy was already on the webpage. It was on the front page, but it was on the webpage. So that was available. This isn't about people being able to read it. It's about people being able to be part of that discussion about what the use of force policies will be. That's it for me. I'm not going to say anything else about it. I've tried to articulate, unless somebody has questions, and I'm happy to answer them. I've tried to make it as clear as I possibly can why I brought this item and what the outcomes I think should have been.
Sure.
So I'll leave it with the committee. That is up to you guys.
Well, and if you don't mind, just unless another one of the committee members has a question, but based off of your answer just now, Mr. Higginbotham, or what you just said, we certainly, I don't think the reason that it's here was for the Public Safety Committee to be an oversight committee for the mayor's office. I think it was to make sure we knew exactly what was going on, because if I recall from the first time it was on the council agenda on referral to the second time, that there were some questions as to, well, hey, where are we moving from here? What are we doing? And so now I think is a perfect time for us to be able to at least start that discussion. So if, based off of what you just said, and this is my mind just being one person on the committee, is that if the mayor's office has already gotten their task force started and together, like Mayor said, that, they could be meeting if they, I guess there was some confusion as to it being brought to committee as well as being under the mayor's purview. So if we can, again, as here, not necessarily, we're not trying to be an oversight committee, but just a committee to where that task force can report to us, which is a public committee, to where anybody can, I'm sorry, I'm just going to take this off. It's just bothering me that I have to keep raising and lowering it. For you guys to be able to report back to us after you start to meet and go through these things. And that's essentially what, and that's just, again, it's just my opinion, but if that's what you're saying based off of your conversation and the things that you've outlined here, because there's been a task force that's already established, bringing it back I mean, having two task force in my mind is not, I don't know that that does anything.
Yeah, I would have, I'm going to end up doing the same thing.
Yeah, it's annoying. so.
I would agree. That was what I took where we were with this to be, was that you wanted some information just brought back after the task force reviewed stuff at this point. And I agree that I don't think we need two task forces. So if the mayor's office has already started one and working towards one, then I agree we don't necessarily need oversight over it. But I don't think it hurts for the task force to come back after you've done your work and let us know where we are with it. That seems to achieve the goal, if I'm understanding it correctly. Can I respond to that?
Yes, please.
Objection to use force policies being researched and thought about and commented on from the mayoral task force committee, whatever the name of it is. But I do feel very strongly about the things that I have shared as to what I think that task force should do. And I think we should know who's on the task force. It should be completely transparent when it meets. People should be able to attend the meetings of that task force. They ought to be able to give input to that task force. And we ought to do a more general recruitment of people to be on the task force. Not because, again, I have 20 people I want to be on the task force. I don't. I have one recommendation, which I made tonight in public for everybody to hear. That's my recommendation. But I do think it's important to involve people in this task force. The whole point of the thing for me is to get people involved who may not have had a voice before. And if we're just talking to the same people, we're not going to get that. And so I think it needs to be thrown open, and we need to make sure people know what we're doing and what the outcomes are going to be, and let them see if it's something they want to call the mayor and say, hey, mayor, I want to be on that. But if this committee wants to go forward with the mayor's, that is your prerogative, obviously. And keep that transparency and inclusion part in it, then okay, let's do it. Let's just move forward that way. But I think it's got to be transparent, and it's got to be inclusive.
Yeah.
And the people have got to know from day one what it is they're addressing.
Yes, and Mr. Higginbotham, just to answer, based off the knowledge that I have just from tonight's meeting, I think we're at a starting point. It's not like we have an established task force of people already, I believe. I mean, and Mayor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're, because of the confusion that there might have been, that we're still at the beginning phase of this. I mean, like you said, Mr. Higginbotham, it could take 3 months, 6 months, whatever it may be. But I mean, am I wrong, Mr. Mayor?
You're not wrong, and I think Mr. Wright will attest to the fact that before this ever came up, I said we're already working on this. We had the opportunity to drop it, and it would have been handled. Mr. Higginbotham, I don't want to argue with you over this, but I will say this. But I will say this. This is an important issue. We've got some really good people in the city of Homewood who contacted me very early on. This was never about just one specific issue. When I called residents back, and I had a chance to hear their heart and hear some of the things that they were interested in, I felt like pretty quickly that there were going to be additional things that could come out of the committee that I wanted to form, things that would be helpful and beneficial to our city. But we're somehow stuck on one single issue, and it can be so much better than that. When you get a lot of good people together discussing things, I don't think we should keep them narrowly focused on one single thing. Yes, if the committee or the council wants to be assured that we're doing the things that we need to do, look, we're proud of what we're doing in the police department. We want everybody to know that. think Chief Ross probably said it better tonight than anybody. So anybody who wants to affirm what is taking place, then we would welcome that. But what if other really good ideas come out of it as well? What if other people were helped in the process? I think that would be a win-win for our city. And quite honestly, I mean, I asked Mr. Higginbotham if he would like to serve on it, because he is passionate about it. I think his answer was, I never really envisioned myself being on that committee. But you can't put stuff on the agenda and then not be willing to do the work. So I'm just simply saying that
Mr. Chairman, I object to that. That is impugning of my character in a way that is not consistent with what I said.
I'm just simply saying, I'm simply saying that if you want to see all these things involved in the community, be a part of it with us. That's all. That's all I'm saying. Be a part of it.
Mr. Chairman?
No, I gotta say something. First of all, we heard from Chief Ross because we had not heard from Chief Ross at this point. So I am so glad that he spoke to us and presented to us, because we are, without listening to him, where are we starting from? So I want to say that. Why is this us versus the mayor? Why is this the council versus the mayor? Why aren't we in this together? We are all Homewood. We all live here. Let's do this together. Let's do the mayor and the council together, period. This is ridiculous. Together. That's how we do this. That's how we do the best job that we can do. Let's do this together.
I have already stipulated several times tonight, I am fine with moving forward with the mayor's group that he's putting together. I have simply offered as a member of council specific concerns that I had about what needed to happen in any group. But I do want to, number one, I want to address a couple of things that were said, because at least one of them, in my opinion, impugned my character as to whether I am willing to do hard work or not. Let me say this. It's not something I was going to say, but I'm going to say it now. You know, I chose not to run again. I chose not to run again for a lot of family reasons that I'm not going to wallow around in here and bore everybody with why. But I chose not to run again. And the easiest thing in the world for me, Mr. Chairman, would have been sit here and not say a word between now and November. Just sit here and not say anything and not do anything. But let me tell you a story about what happened to me. After the death of George Floyd, after several things happened, been going on for a week or two, my son came to me, Joshua, my son. You guys don't know my son. You've seen him. He's probably half a foot taller than the last time you saw him, even if it was 6 months ago, because he's growing like a weed, like a lot of kids do in high school. And my son's not perfect. The number one thing he's good at is being a pain in my keister. And I imagine a lot of kids like that. But my kid has the biggest heart. And he has an oversized sense of fairness and how important it is to treat people equally and justly. And he came to me after George Floyd on a Sunday night. He came to me and his mother. And with a cracking voice, he said to me, "Dad, what can we do? We've got to do something. We've got to do something. What can we do?" And, Mr. Chairman, I will tell you, I'm embarrassed to say that night I was a failure as a father, because I didn't have an answer for my son. I didn't know what we should do. I didn't know what any of us could do about it. But I backed up and I said, well, what can I do as a member of City Council? What can I do as a member of City Council? And I thought, well, one thing I can do is request that the public, especially people of color, be given an opportunity to have discussions about some of these issues that seem to be of such great concern, one of which was use of force policies. So this isn't about the mayor for me. And it certainly isn't about politics, because I got no more politics to do. I'm leaving in November. This is about a genuine concern that that there are people in our community who don't have the level of trust that I want them to have in our city and what we do. I want those people to be brought to the table in a way where they can trust us. And I am not saying that we're not trustworthy, but that doesn't change what's going on now. That doesn't change the dynamic. We need to find ways to reach out to those folks and make them feel that they are part of the discussion. This entire thing about this is not the mayor versus the council. And as far as this being about one issue, use of force, it was to start with because that was the one issue that I took up. But fortunately, after my meeting with the mayor, I sent him an email that itemized what I had talked about with him in the meeting. And he responded to that email and said, "Thanks for talking to me, Mike." He didn't say, "Wait a minute, those things aren't true. That's not what you talked to me about." The first item on here says, "So my thoughts on a task force, it should at a minimum review use of force policies. It could certainly address other things too. Secondly, the goals of a task force should be articulated clearly and in writing from the beginning, both for the benefit of those who serve, that is, here is our charge and here's what we're to produce, and for the public who need to know specifically what the task force is reviewing so they can make informed decisions about how, if at all, they might want to be involved." This does not preclude a general statement, too, that allows the task force to address other subjects that might bubble up outside the specific ones listed. That is verbatim the email I sent to the mayor after our last meeting. I have not made this about one issue. My original committee was about one issue because I wanted to take a first step. The mayor saw it as an opportunity to talk about several issues. That's fantastic. Let's do that. But if we're going to do it, it needs to be transparent and it needs to be inclusive. But I'm not going to just sit here and have someone say that I'm not willing to do the work. If the council wants me to serve on that committee, I'll serve on that committee. But I am much more interested in seeing some African American representation on that committee than Mike Higginbotham. I am much more interested in seeing some folks from our Latino community on that committee rather than Mike Higginbotham. And that's what I said to the mayor. I didn't say I don't want to do work. I didn't say I don't want to be part of this. I'm happy to be part of it. I just want to make sure that that committee is as representative as it can be. Now, I don't know how I can be any more clear about what I tried to do. And these things keep being said that are simply not true, so I can't just sit here and not say anything in response to that. I mean, I anticipated from the very beginning this was going to be a difficult issue to discuss. And so I'll take some lumps on it. But I'm not going to be told that I'm lazy because I didn't want to be on the committee when I was very clear about why I didn't want to be on the committee. And I'm not going to be told that I am narrow-minded and won't address any other issue when I so clearly stated in my email that you just heard after our conversation that we could talk about anything. I just wanted to make sure that use of force was part of the conversation. So if the Public Safety Committee wants to move forward with the mayor's group, that's great. I just hope that the group will be transparent, and I hope it will be inclusive, and I hope everybody in the city that wants an opportunity to participate will get an opportunity to have a voice in that committee.
Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham.
Mr. McCluskey?
Yes, Mr. Wright,
Just
please.
echo that.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Higginbotham, and thank you, Chief. Thanks to both of you. I think this is all helpful for an important discussion tonight and in the future. And frankly, I will say, and I would dare say about Mike is probably feeling this way too. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm reassured by what I heard tonight, Chief. I really am. Thoroughly reassured. I know you've been a member of this force for a number of years before you became chief as well. So you probably went through a lot of these policies and learned them along the way as well. And so I just wanted to speak to that. And I appreciate, Mike's passion for this, and I appreciate Mike's interest and concern about a policy that can be trusted. I think that's very important, and I think that's the heart of this issue. And I think it does need to be trusted by the entire population, and it certainly needs to be entrusted by our African American population. We do have a task force, often running, sort of, trying to get it going. I think I've heard from the mayor, and I appreciate the mayor speaking to us tonight as well. I heard from the mayor saying, absolutely be transparent, and I appreciate Mike's connection with the council, perhaps not trying to pit us against the mayor's office, but that we can work together, and thank you for that, Ms. Andrus, that we can work together, that the mayor's task force can be, number one, I'm saying I don't want to prioritize it, but it certainly should be accountable to the council. He's always been accountable, all of his committees have, but in particular, to make this one accountable and to make it transparent. And I certainly saw open arms for that. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, to make it flexible. And so I think we're off and running with a task force. Let's let it do its job. And Mike, let's see if this task force, if it's not done perfectly, and probably won't for 100% of the people in this room, but let's see how it goes. Let's see if it's flexible enough to meet these critical concerns today, critical concerns from yesterday, frankly. I dare say it's going to be transparent, and I know it's going to be accountable to this council, and let's give it a chance. Let's give it a chance, and to a chance to get to the core of what I think is important, that the result, and let's see what kind of membership, and let's talk about that and get it going, but that the result, regardless of who's on the committee, I certainly agree with you that it should represent a diverse part of our Homewood community. And let's see if it results in something that we can trust. I'm already so reassured today, right now, of what I've heard. But let's keep building, and let's work together and make this happen, and see if it's something we can all trust, and let's let this have a shot. And it's coming back. It's not going anywhere. It's not going to disappear. And let's just don't have two tracks. Let's have one track. And let's see if we can make that work, albeit with the concerns and considerations that have been raised tonight.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Mr. Wright. And I think that was the point that I was trying to get to early. I think it kind of got sidetracked a little bit, but we don't need two roads. We've got one road that can get us there. And I think this is the right one. Does anybody else from the committee have anything?
No, just agreement with President Wright, and I agree with you. That's what I was trying to say earlier was we've got this moving in a direction. Let's keep it here, carry it over, and keep track of it as we're
Full
going down that
expectation of
road.
reporting back, sure.
And as we need to do anything with it, we'll do something with it.
Okay. I need to make sure that I'm turning around, that anybody else doesn't need to.
I do have one more thing.
Okay.
As we have these boards and committees and et cetera, we always have a council liaison. I would love to see Mike serve on that role. I mean, if you accept that, if you don't, I will. But I would love a council liaison. Like I said, this doesn't have to be a separate, we're better together. So, Mike, if you want to do it, I'll do it. If not, I'll do it. But I want to have someone from the council to be a part of the, discussion and show everyone how important this is to all of us. So.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to be the council liaison. I'd even rather be a liaison from the council than to take up one of the spaces on the committee. So I'm happy to accept that role if that's what the council wants me to do. I serve at the pleasure of the council.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Should we?
Well, I mean.
We don't need a motion.
Yeah,
do we?
just, that doesn't need a motion.
So just real quick, obviously this is a tense issue. I mean, I think we just saw that. It's something that I don't think anybody in the room takes lightly. Mike has been a hard worker with me the last 4 years, and I don't, it's hard to hear any implication other than that. Do we always see eye to eye and agree 100% of the time? No, but I doubt any of you guys do with your constituents or with your co-counselor. So I think it's important to point out, too, that Mike's father was a law enforcement officer. I mean, I don't think that could be understated as well. And I would just like to point out that I have fortunately been able to ride along with the police department many times. And I have seen what Chief Ross said. I've seen officers that are nothing but professional. And that's not just whoever I'm riding with. That's when we pull up to back somebody else up. So I just want to say that, I think obviously, if the mayor's office wants to take it, that's great. I agree, with what was just said. I think it's probably, it is something that I hear about, and I think it's hard when it is such a tense issue for it to not have some connection to the council, just at least in an informative sense, to keep track of where things are and how things are going. So, that's kind of my 2 cents. I see both sides of it, okay? So I just want to be clear that, we are here to move the city forward. We are here to, be a positive influence and be positive leaders for the city. So that's what I think we need to be doing, and I think what we just discussed should definitely head us in the right direction. But, I respect Mike, and I appreciate his willingness to speak up on an issue that he's probably seen both sides of as well. So,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wolverton. Anybody else?
I'll just say briefly, it is a tense issue. It isn't the council versus the mayor's office, but for issues like this, it's why we have structure. It's why we have boards and committees, all of which follow sunshine rules, so there will be complete transparency. Many of our boards and committees report to specific council committees like public safety. I don't see any reason why we should handle this one any differently. It works in many other situations. If the mayor started his task force, let's let him put that task force together and let it report to this committee. And Mike, I do think you should be the liaison because I recognize your passion, and you've already made steps in this direction. I think you can give a lot of direction to the task force. Excuse me. So, I guess are we going to carry over and wait for a report?
Yeah, we'll just
reporting back? Okay.
Correct. We'll just carry
Very good.
over and expect reports back. No, you can, as long as you understand that there's no specific discussion of individual allegations or anything like that that comes up. This is strictly about this policy and the task force in review. Yep, you're more than welcome to come up.
Hi. I'm not good at public speaking. I'm a little nervous. My name is Kelly Householder, and I have spoken with many of the council people about this task force. I have talked to Mike Higginbotham. I have actually talked to the mayor, and the mayor actually asked me to serve on the task force. And I just want to say that in my discussion with the mayor, it was a very broad, what he wanted to do seemed very broad, and he was very focused on community service in Rosedale, which is very important. I think that should happen. But what Mike is bringing up and what I really want to see happen as a citizen, and I've been talking to a ton of people about this in our community, and I've been talking to all my counselor people about this, is that Mike's suggestion of it being something very, very specific about oversight for use of force policies, the policies within the police department. I loved hearing about that tonight, but I think we have seen in the country that policies are one thing, what happens on the street is another thing. So the oversight committee that Mike is suggesting was like very specific, very pointed to that topic. The hour-long conversation that I had with the mayor, his view of the task force seems much broader. He was not as concerned with use of force policy, and so that is my concern as a citizen, and I have several people here with me that will stand up who have the same concerns. We've been talking to a lot of people in our community, and we want to see this as a task force I would like to see it as outside the mayor's office, whatever that means. I'm not sure. I'm like in real time trying to learn what city government is all about. But I think there needs to be like more checks and balances. It needs to be outside of the current checks and balances because there is a lot of unsettlement in the community, and we need to build trust and show that there's just multiple checks and balances outside of just the mayor, the police chief, and the city council. So that is my 2 cents.
I'm sorry, my mic's off. Thank you, Ms. Householder. And I think, again, as Mr. Thames just explicitly said, we have a structure that's built together to where we have these different committees, departments that all kind of report to one another. So I think the fact that you've been asked to be on the task force with your passion about this and to speak to Mike behind you with his passion behind this, I think that task force that is being put together will certainly accomplish those things. And if there are questions that you have inside that task force of, hey, can we look at this specifically, then, by all means do that. But again, it's going to be reported back to here, which is why we're carrying it over. It'll remain on this agenda so that we will continue to have updates. So I think what you're doing and being a part of that task force, and now Mike being on it as well, is certainly going to help.
So how do we make sure that this happens? Because, and maybe the mayor hadn't taken any more steps because all this was happening
There
here.
was some confusion
But-
based off of tonight, but I think we now have a straight road to get there. So I believe if you talk with the mayor about it, and of course now Mr. Higginbotham as well, then you guys can get started and report back to the Public Safety Committee.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Okay. Well, we will carry over 170620. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see it.
Good evening, council. My name's Nick Sims, 520 Oxford Circle, Homewood, Alabama. I just wanted to come up and, I know this agenda item's gone long this evening, but I think it's worth the time. And so I appreciate all y'all for having the discussion. I thank Mike for his courage and his passion and what he said this evening. You can hear it in his voice, and I think a lot of y'all have recognized that. I've spoke to some other community members as well, just as far as, the scope of this task force. I haven't seen a written scope, which I think would be great for the community to be able to see if the mayor's forming a task force and people are being invited to be a part of it. It'd be good to know what they're being invited to be a part of specifically. So that would be great from a transparency issue. I've reached out to the mayor to request to be on the task force. We've exchanged some emails, but I've yet to actually connect with him. I hope to be a part of it. I may not necessarily be the best fit, but I would like to apply and put forth the effort to at least have questions asked, some things that I want to see addressed, and again, utmost respect for the police department, Chief Ross, but just things, Chief Ross presented on some data about people of color being represented in our force, and really the same goes for our entire city. He mentioned those different functions that they fulfill, but how many people of color are in roles of management or leadership and actually making decisions within our city? When we look at use of force, it's one thing to be trained on what is actually legal to do. That is very important, and we have a great policy and it's online. And I think beyond that, we should look at things such as implicit bias training, because implicit bias really comes into that fight or flight mentality. You have to make a decision, okay? You've been trained on what to do with force, but what about your decision making and those implicit biases you may lean on when making that decision in the field? And so I think that's really important to consider. Again, I don't want to go through an entire list of questions that I have about what this committee could do. I think if we just have a written scope of what members of this committee is going to look at, if the mayor could put that forth, that would be really helpful as citizens
to know what the scope of this committee will do, who we should have involved, so we can have people of different backgrounds, people of different perspectives, people of diversity. We can look at things not only as people of color, but we can look at the elderly, we can look at people with disabilities, people who struggle with mental health disorders. How is our department interacting and working with those community members and making sure that really, as Councilor Andrus addressed earlier, this is really something we can do together. That's what it's all about. We're a great city, and that's why I just want to go ahead and come up and say thank you for your time, and I appreciate this being a topic of discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so we will carry over, as mentioned before. So, okay. That's okay. Oh.
Hey guys, my name is Allie Magador, proud to be a citizen of Homewood. The reason that we moved here is for diversity and inclusion and the awesome services my son will be able to receive through the school system. So I'm very proud to be here. I think the thing that is missing that everyone is kind of alluding to, I keep hearing you guys say that this is a very tense issue and there are different sides. And I think what and me as a person of color and the only person of color in this room that is a citizen of Homewood, is important to say that there is no side when the basis of why we're looking at this policy is because of treatment of people of color around the United States. It didn't just start with George Floyd, it hasn't ended with George Floyd. So I think it's important for you guys to understand that the basis of all of this is just basic human rights. So there is no side on that. There is no right, no wrong. You can say that we need to evaluate our policies and love and appreciate our police force. I also think it isn't enough to say that you hire people of color and that it reflects our community. How are we treating those people of color that we hire and that we employ? I think it's very important to look at that as well. I think it's important to hear from police officers who are people of color. I think it's important to hear from everyone across the board that actually work within the city of Homewood as well. I don't think it's fair to only hear from these department heads. I think it's important to hear from everyone at the top to the bottom of this. And I don't want what we have going to be derailed by, oh, this is the mayor against the council. I appreciate Mike for his willingness that what he thought he could do is to say, hey, I'm a city councilor and I'm going to bring this to the table. That takes a whole lot of courage to be able to try to do that because you didn't have an explanation for your son, and I appreciate that. From the bottom of my heart, I appreciate that. So I think that we need to really focus on who's on the task force. The basis of transparency needs to be who is on that task force, and that if the mayor oversees it, great. It's great that we have the momentum going, but we need to have that liaison, and it just needs to fully be transparent. Not to just say, oh, we feel great, the mayor's got it. We need to keep that steamroll going, that everything is out and in the open. Thank y'all for your time.
All right, I'm actually going to carry 170620 over on the agenda, and we'll go to 020720, request for consideration to change the short section of Vulcan Road from one-way back to two-way, brought to us by Michael Williams and Greg Cobb.
Mr. Williams is here, who made the request of us, and the paper I handed out a few minutes ago, there's a drawing of that short section that's one way. Everybody's between Hardee's and what was a gas station that's changed names a few times. So I'd let Mr. Williams to come up here and speak, he put on the big screen, he brought these drawings, and Brian's been so good to put them up there for us, so you can see what we're looking at.
Can I ask Greg a question real quick? Yes. Hey, Greg, so this is between
Mr. Cobb.
Hardee's and Jim and Nick's? No?
No,
Other side?
Other side of
Okay.
Hardee's. Yep.
Hardee's in the hotel, gotcha. Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha, thank you.
It's currently one way to the north, and then the other part of the road is all two-way. So if you come out of that gas station or out of what used to be the Holiday Inn, you'd have to always turn right, you couldn't turn left. So when you get down to Oxmoor Road, it'd be a right only, because there's a median there.
Ladies and
Mr. Williams, go, yes, please go ahead. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a consultant for Royal Investments, Royal Builders, and Petro America, all of which would have an involvement in this. We're wanting to tear the old service station down and the car wash, install new pumps, new tanks, and create a 3,600 square foot convenience store. We've done this several times before, tearing an old store down, putting a new one in its place. Gives you the ability to have handicap restrooms. And this road was two-way many years ago. I used to live on top of Red Mountain, and so I remember back when it was two-way. And I think the reason it was made one-way was because an establishment down the road that jitterbugs. The people coming out of there would tend not to stop or turn the wrong way, and that's why they made it one way. And since that establishment is now null and void, and the people come, and we also, if you can tell, well, on the other, can you go back to the other picture? Not me. The drawing. Okay, what we're doing, if I may, is we're creating a single entry off of Oxmoor and putting landscaping in the other one, and that's why we want to come out on Vulcan Road, further from the entrance. It would be in, going west, the second entrance, which is now an exit, which is really too close to the intersection at the current time. We would turn that into a landscaping border and be able to come out on Vulcan Road further away from the intersection and make a right turn only.
So you'd be eliminating access back onto Oxmoor from the service station, you'd go via Vulcan?
Right, you would come in.
That's a good thing. Yeah.
And then you would come out on Vulcan further from the intersection.
Okay.
And those cars that he needs to get. Not you, the police. Where did he go? There he went. Okay, I'm sorry. I hope that's not your ward. Anyway, simple. At one point in time, it was two-way. It was changed to one-way for probably a very good reason, and now we would like to have it changed back to two-way for a very good reason.
Okay. Either chief or captain, if you guys want to, do you guys have you looked at this, seen this yet? Just curious whether or not you have any.
First time I've seen it.
Okay.
But I don't see, other than striping, I don't see a problem with it.
Well, yeah, if you, can you come up, I'm sorry, we're used to being, in the small room in the back, and now we're not, sorry.
I mean, I can hear it.
No, I'm just saying, come to the mic.
I have a voice that carries.
on the law enforcement side, I mean, I see the picture, I know what we're talking about, I know the old, unfortunately, long enough to.
Yeah.
But on our, I agree with Councilman Thames, I think it would be actually a little better, flow better there.
Yeah.
It's kind of hit and miss, the corner kind of messes things up, so on our side, I don't see a problem.
Okay.
I don't know that there's enough traffic there that really should disrupt too much, so.
Mr. Cobb, is there a sight distance issue or anything at the intersection itself?
That's what I was going to address.
Yeah.
I spoke with Mr. Williams. We met on site back a month ago. And we spoke about this, and he's going to vegetate it, and we had the discussion, keep the vegetation low, so we
Okay.
don't have a sight distance problem. We're looking back to the east.
Okay.
So we've already had that discussion.
Okay, okay.
Alabama Power won't let us put nothing tall out there either.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Wolverton.
Can we put that picture back up, Brian, please? I mean, I drive by this intersection every day. I mean, I did talk to Randy Hambley earlier today because I saw it. I didn't know what it was entirely about. But people do come whipping around that corner pretty quick, and I kind of feel like putting them out on Vulcan, trying to turn right, actually, I don't see how it isn't more of a sightline distance problem than before it really starts to curve.
I think, sorry, I'm gonna jump in.
Go ahead.
Real quick, getting out of the property right now with the bumps, bruises, it's harder to get out right there. We've had more cars get closely hit there, hanging up in the, it's just messed up. So
Okay.
I'm not.
I guess my only other concern is that
it'd be a problem.
we've been told that there was supposed to be some sort of new development coming there at some point soon. So, you know, I guess in my mind, I'm just a little hesitant to do something before we know what's happening next door, but that's just my 2 cents.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm the guy in the commercial real estate business. I'm sure that someone's looking at that. It's a hard place right now to believe there's going to be what I think you guys want is a real nice development on the front gate of West Homewood. And I'm not sure what Mike Patel's got going on there. I know he's been trying to sell it and find folks, but it could be a while, is my only point. Especially a while until the city approves what y'all want versus what might possibly go there.
Okay, Mr. Wright.
I may be wrong.
Yes, sir. Is there another entrance to the hotel there that gets affected at all on the other side of that service station? Man, I'm just wondering if that's going to be impacted.
Well, right now, it's an in and out, and they come through the gas station property to get in and out.
They come,
Yeah, there is an agreement, joint use agreement. so-
agreement with the service station?
Yes, sir.
Counselor.
No.
Ingress, egress?
The new structure is going to be back against the back line. We're also going to redo the canopy. I think there's only going to be 4 pumps out there now.
Correct, yeah.
So I think it's on the drawing.
So that won't change?
Sir?
That piece shouldn't change?
That's the current.
You were talking about leveling it and starting over?
Oh, yeah, yes, yeah. We'll actually build one back behind it. Can you put the drawing back up?
Well, my question is, doesn't that destroy your joint use agreement?
No, we're not impacting that roadway that goes when you turn in. That driveway right here off of Oxmoor, they make it a sharp right turn and go in, and they also come out that way or back up Bolton Road.
So you're talking about doing away with the second entrance?
Yes, sir. Yeah, doing away with the second one.
Okay.
And getting the cars further away, further down Oxmoor.
Joint use agreement entrance for remaining?
Yeah.
Councilor McCluskey.
Yes, Mr. Gwaltney.
So that is one of my concerns as well, is the sight line that Councilor Wolverton referenced. I would like to have PD or Randy at least take a look at it, because looking at it from the street view, it is going to be challenging to navigate for people coming out of your place. The second thing that concerns me is that first entrance that is shared with the hotel. My concern is that you're now going to have people wanting to go out and cross Oxmoor to go back eastbound. And that's going to be even, you understand what I'm saying? If you get one entrance, this entrance only into your place, and you're wanting to come out onto Vulcan Road, the people that decide, well, I don't want to go back out on Vulcan Road, I want to go back out this way toward the interstate, which is where probably the bulk of your traffic comes from, is the interstate.
Yeah, well,
So that's a big risk. So how do you control that part? To keep them from crossing?
Well, it will be a right-in only.
Like just signage or?
We can signage.
That's just my concern, because that will cause wrecks at that location if you have people all of a sudden trying to cross basically 5 lanes of traffic.
Sure, sure. And do
I'm no
the,
traffic engineer. That's why I would defer to Randy.
and do the owners of the hotel property know about this? Have they been notified?
Yeah, and that may be part of the development he's been talking about. We've been trying to buy that adjacent piece of property as well.
The entire hotel property?
Yeah, and,
Okay, so, but do they know about the two-way traffic request?
oh yeah, they know about everything that we're
Okay.
doing, as a
All right.
matter of fact, and we're hoping that at some point in time, he will decide to sell that piece of property.
If I'm not mistaken, it's still on the abatement board right now, too, just for reference.
Okay.
I think they've had their license pulled again.
Does anybody else on the committee have, or not on the committee, have a question in regards to the item that's on the agenda right now? The two-way? Nope. Okay. So, Mr. Gwaltney, you would like, do you want me to carry this over to have Randy or somebody report back just the?
Well, I don't want to be the sole person.
No, that's.
To me, it feels good with it. We still have another opportunity in council. You can move it on if you want to, have Randy report it out there. I don't want to slow down what they're doing. I just wanted to make sure that we at least address the sideline potentially and have some reassurances that they'll at least sign it to say, we're not going to allow people to go back out into Oxford and potentially cause issues.
Well, anything we do will have to be approved by the engineer, city engineer.
Can I bring that real quick? You're talking about turning left out of the one entrance back onto Oxmoor?
Correct.
Yeah, we have them try to do that now,
Hmm.
and it's a dangerous situation.
I guess
That's happening now.
the concern is if you only make it one, then it pushes them that
That
way.
part's been a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
That's part of the turkey foot thing. So,
You
I mean,
can, you can make it, though, by putting a concrete pad there that only allows you to right in and right out. I mean, you can make it where it's really tough. You'd have to turn right and then come back across it. You- Yeah, you can create a right in, right out. I think it'd have to be on his property maybe, or.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're doing one in Calera right now. We've got a 12-inch high concrete island right in, right out on 22.
I think what Captain Sutton was describing was actually trying to go left out, not just right out.
Right, but
Yeah, but what
I'm
he's
saying you
saying
can
is that
stop it.
depending on how
Okay,
you build
I got
it, you can keep them from going left.
Yeah, you can stop it by putting a concrete island there.
Mr. White?
What is your time frame
Yeah,
that
that was gonna be
you're
the next
looking for here?
I've been here longer than I should be already, okay?
If we carried this over, it would come back up again in 2 weeks and then need to go to council the week after that. That would give us time to have the engineers look at it. Is that fit with your time frame, or are we causing you problems?
We've already extended the purchase time on this property, and it's getting close, so that's the only drawback. I'd probably have to extend again.
Well, if we think that there's a chance they can look at it this week, then I would say let's go ahead and send it to council, and then if we need to continue it there.
I agree.
Carry it over there, we'll carry it over there.
Okay. And we can have Randy and those guys take a look at it for us pretty soon. Okay. All right. So was that a motion? Oh, Mr. Thames, sorry.
I will second the motion that I think Mr. Wyatt made.
Okay. Absolutely. So we have a motion from Mr. Wyatt, a second by Mr. Thames. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Yes, to approve.
Sir.
We get a copy of that charter use agreement?
Thanks, sir.
Should be listed in the city, so
Okay, and with that, we're adjourned.
Thank
So
you.
it'll be before
I don't have
the
anybody else to
council
speak.
next week.
I don't have anybody else to speak.
Well, that's good.
No, unfortunately, no, we still have to. Mr. Coker's sitting in the back just waiting on us to get started. He's been here for 45 minutes, so more than 45 minutes, actually. So yes. You ready to go? Yes, let's go.
Okay, the special issues committee for July 10th, this is March 16th. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Walkley?
Here.
Dan Marshall?
Here.
Mr. McCluskey? Yeah, but I think he just stepped out. And Ms. Andrews?
Here.
All right, could I get a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes as they were presented, and dispense with that reading and approval?
Second.
All right, motion by Mr. Gwaltney, seriously, my brain now. And seconded by Mr. Higginbotham. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that's 4-0 to approve the minutes. Okay, I'm going to skip to the issue first. Well, oh yeah, there it is, okay. So I'm going to do 060720, request for consideration and discussion of a citywide alert system for citizen information from Councilor McCluskey. And we have Mr. Jim Coker, who is the director of Jeffco EMA here, and he's been getting to participate as a citizen in our previous meeting. So we thought, since he is the one who is kind of oversees this system, that we would have the expert come and give us a little demonstration and tell us a little bit about it, so that we all know a little bit more than we do now.
Hey, Councilor Smith, thank you. It's good to see you again. Before I start, I want to recognize a couple people. One is Councilor Andrus, who I've actually never met, but we've talked a lot, and Battalion Chief Stoney. Our life has been COVID since early March, and thank you both in public for everything that you're continuing to do. This is a community-wide effort. Okay, first slide, please. Second slide, please. I'm going to fly through some of this stuff. Okay, we serve who you serve. Your citizens are our citizens. Go ahead. So this is the Jefferson County Mass Notification System. This covers every city in the county and unincorporated Jefferson County as well. Next. In 2015, the old system was called Warren, was going away. That company no longer exists. So we had to find something that was very, very good that would meet our needs in this county. We are like a little miniature state because we have so many different cities here. Mike Anastasia was very familiar with Warren. Mike helped us bring Everbridge on board. You never should have let him retire. I wasn't finished with him yet. Okay, next. Okay, this went statewide as a law in March by the governor. Unfortunately, next, the legislature had to go home because of COVID before they could fund it. But we are in very good shape here in Jefferson County. Next. Okay, there are three parts of Everbridge, and I will go through them very briefly for you. One is the EMA use, which is definitely of interest to you. Second is internal use for you, which you've actually been doing since 2015 in Homewood. And then the third is external to the public. Next. Probably hard to see on this screen, but these are different groups. If you think about the calling trees that we all used to have years ago, these are a lot of our calling trees at our level. So we can notify all the police chiefs and fire chiefs and hospitals and schools and so on and so forth. There are many, many groups that were built over the last several years. Next. This is why we had to have something right here. This scares me. It scares all of you. We've all lived through this. Next. Look at Jefferson County on this map. I love being number one. I hate being number one on this map. I can't stand it. But because we are the winner still in Alabama for the number of tornadoes going back to 1950, we've got to have something here. Next. If you think you're not going to get hit, just a matter of time. And Homewood has been hit in years past. Next. Okay, so this is paid for in our budget, the EMA budget. It's paid for by Birmingham 911 and by Shelby County 911. This is very much a collaborative effort between government entities. Next. So currently we have over 211,000 contacts across Jefferson County. Next. So what's a contact? On the map you see a whole bunch of little dots. Gray dots are residential lines, yellow dots are business lines, green dots are people that have opted in to give us cell information. This gets updated once a year through the 911 centers so we can update our residential and business abilities there. Next. We also have, and you can't see them because it's too small, over 200 schools charted in this system. We've got over 400 chemical facilities. They're called Tier 2 facilities in this county. They all have some quantity of chemical. Those are also on the system. Next. So we use this for weather. We use this for a lot of different things in the county. Hazardous materials. If you think back to when they had the, I'm going to get rid of this for a minute. I can breathe. When they had the chemical spill on Highway 280. And the fire department issued an order. Luckily, there wasn't a lot of wind that day. It was a shelter-in-place order. That did get a little bit of Homewood. Homewood Fire was very involved in that call. It caught Homewood High School. It caught part of Sanford University. So we use this for a lot of different reasons. We have used this for active shooter. Always on a Sunday morning for some really weird reason. In those cases, the law enforcement in other cities have called us, said this is the perimeter. So we just draw a shape on a map and everybody inside gets the message that's sent out by that city, which to this date has been shelter in place. And then when it's over, we tell them that too. Okay? Okay, this is a little rectangle right over South 18th Street. I drew that because I knew it'd catch your attention, because it's South 18th Street. There are a lot of good things I like to eat on South 18th Street. I'll knock you down to get to a Savage's cookie, and have for years. This is an example because some cities and Jefferson County also use this same system to let their citizens know if we're going to have to repair a bridge, if there's going to be a long-term road closure, something like that, because the shape can be drawn to follow the road and then let the citizens know a couple of weeks ahead of the project. My mother, she's been gone a lot of years. She lived here in Homewood. She knew one way only to get to the Piggly Wiggly. We've all been there. Okay, if that way got disrupted or interrupted, she was lost. So this is a matter of public convenience. And this is something we do because we're the ones that have control of the map part. It's just an easy request to us. Next. Okay, IPAWS. This is the serious stuff. Integrated Public Alerting and Warning System. This is like an Amber Alert. This is when it's one of those days that we're going to remember. We've only done this about 3 times in the last 5 years in the county. That's it. And this message actually has to bounce to the federal government in Washington and back before it's sent out. It takes about 10 seconds. But the criteria are so strict, we can't just decide to send an IPAWS message. But, okay, next. Okay, this is internal use. Homewood Fire has been using this for 5 years. This is available to every city in Jefferson County for their own internal use. Different cities use it at different levels, depending on their personal needs or their city needs. Think about the calling tree again. Okay, this allows internally for your fire chief to have very quick access to every station, every shift, every firefighter. Police departments use it, Public Works use it. It's very quick. It's a quick way to notify your employees of something that's going on. And right now, under COVID, a fire department, you may have a need for a couple of extra firefighters to work a shift. So you can notify them, and they can let you know that I'm available or I'm not available. A lot of this is shift staffing. Okay, next. Communications, your 911 centers. When something happens, one of the first things they have to do is notify the proper response. Police, fire, Public Works. In this case, I've lived in Homewood since 1969. Okay, trees fall in Homewood out of fright. They heard a tree somewhere else, and up in Bluff Park, fell down, so I'm going to fall down too. It happens. But we like our trees here. This is a fairly common occurrence. So this is another way for communications to notify the right people. Okay, next slide. It's also a way, two-way notifications. Some cities use this to communicate between mayors and councils and committees and so on. It's pushing information around using software and technology. One great thing about this, if I'm a public works supervisor and I notify somebody, I get a confirmation that my employee got it. I know when they got it, I know how they got it, and they have to acknowledge that they got it. So don't come back to me later and say, I never got that. Yeah, you did. Okay, next. Okay, it's a little hard to see, but this is a standard notification template, and we use this for every single notification that goes out. So when we train people, we train them on one template, but it applies to a lot of different things, a whole lot of things. The arrows are, the blue is just a standard message. The red is a message where they can actually reply back to you. Think about your fire department and you have a hazmat incident. Okay, the fire chief wants to know how long will it take you to come in from your off-duty job and staff a station, because the hazmat folks are busy. The reply may be, push 1, I can be there in 30 minutes. 2, I can be there in an hour. It's a polling question. When we train, quite often we use, well, like Southern dinners, right? Okay, we're probably getting pretty close to it right now. He's smiling. Okay? So the question on this kind of notification for training will be, I can bring to the dinner, and then A, green beans, B, sweet potatoes, whatever. They all identify with it. People identify with it, and it clicks. Okay, the yellow is a conference call feature. The same software can also handle up to 99 people on a conference call. Okay, next. And the last piece I want to talk to you about this, and then I'm going to move on to one other part that I want to give you an update on, is kind of the fun part. It's keywords. Many of us have sent in a keyword to something. I know if I've got a prescription at CVS, I'd send in a keyword and they'll let me know when the prescription's ready. This one already exists, Homewood Info. There are several more blanks that you can use. That's up to the city as to how you want to use it. This is voluntary, so the information is not being pushed down somebody's throat. They want to get information from the city. Okay, next. Some sample messages. Other cities are using this to let the public know when your meetings are. You can attach agendas to this as a link. A lot of your neighboring cities are doing this. People want to know about the meetings, another way to get the information to them. We love Homewood Day. I love to go there and eat those waffle things. Another good way to push out information to the city that they want to get, because it's voluntary. And if they didn't have an interest, they would not have sent in the keyword. Okay? Libraries use this. Once the library can get back to book sales again, that's another way to publicize that. Okay, next. I spoke earlier about paving. We all love it when the city paves something. We don't love it when we're having to live through it. Okay? That's universal, I think. So this is another way to notify citizens ahead of time. These are the paving projects for next week or next month. Got to find another way home. Okay? Trees fall out of fright. Okay? If I want to get information from the city of Homewood, well, now you can tell me when a tree's gone down and I can find something else. Homewood Christmas Parade. I love it. I've had children in it. Some time back now. But what does that do to traffic in downtown Homewood? For a moment in time, people have to find another route. Well, what if you can push information out one more way? Okay, next. All right, I'm going to move on to tornado sirens, but before I do that, because these things all tie together, do you know what the cost is to the city of Homewood for this communication system? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's in our budget. We pay for it. The reason that we pay for it, you're notifying people about parades and paving, but when we have a tornado or a disaster come through, that means I can touch the people that you can touch. Okay, sirens. We have 255 of these little gyms in Jefferson County. That's 100 more than Dallas, Texas. We're a little bit smaller than Dallas, Texas, but we have a lot of tornadoes here. Okay, next. In 2014, 50% did not work. This is a siren that was laying on top of an elementary school in East Jefferson County. It had fallen off the pole and leaned there for several years. Okay? So the Jefferson County Commission came forward with a lot of money to get these things repaired initially, and now they budget $100,000 a year to pay for the repairs. Each city pays for the routine maintenance. That's kind of like getting your oil checked in your car and checking your battery and that kind of thing. And that has actually come down over the last couple of years because as the sirens get maintained better, they have fewer problems. Exactly. Okay, next. So out of 255, we have 7 that need repair right now, which is actually below what I would consider a number of concern. Okay, next. This is one reason why. These little guys right here, they like to chew wires. These sirens are mechanical devices, so they'll chew a wire and the siren goes down. Okay, next. Copper thieves have taken them out. Next. Lightning strikes, we've got one down now that was taken out by lightning. Okay? When lightning strikes, that takes out the radio system. These are active radio. Okay, next. So these are activated in a polygon. You saw weather warning polygons earlier. It's the same exact polygon. So at the exact same moment that the contacts are being notified, the sirens in the polygon are being told to yell, and they do. Next. Okay, so in this particular polygon, 49 sirens sound. The rest of them in Jefferson County don't sound. I need your help to remind the public of that because that is still only a couple of years old. And a lot of people will say, well, my siren didn't sound. Well, it didn't sound because you were nowhere near the tornado, thank goodness. Okay, next. Okay, this is a storm that was heading right toward Homewood a couple of years ago, and you'll remember this one. Next. This storm was heading right toward Homewood, Samford University, and this happened to be the same day as their very first nationally televised football game. Of course, right? Next. So the warnings came out, the polygons notified the contacts, sirens went off. Next. All those little dots, the contacts, 52,000 contact dots were in the path of the storm, and they were notified. We've done a couple of countywide notifications of the 211,000 numbers. It takes about 5 minutes to notify over 200,000. Something like this will take about a minute and a half. We've had contacts get notified even before the sirens start spinning. The system is that fast. And it's all of our lives, right? Okay, go ahead. So the end result, Samford got a great win after a 3-hour tornado delay. They went home after midnight. But we have very close communications with people like this, like Samford University. We stayed on the phone with them the whole time. They were very concerned. So next. Okay, we also use a lot of social media to help get the word out. So my point in all this is all these things tie together. So you've got access to a mass notification system that doesn't cost you anything to reach your citizens in several different ways. You have the opportunity to use it internally for a lot of different ways. And then we're going to watch over you as a city for the things that we are mandated to watch over you for, weather, chemical spills, etc. Okay, next, and that's it. I tried to talk quickly. That talking about green beans and stuff just, you know,
I just can't help that. Jim, we really do appreciate you spending time with us tonight and giving us more information on this because I will tell you, even though the system apparently has been in Homewood since 2015, some of us were not privy or didn't know that about the system. So we're glad to hear it. It really is I think a really valuable tool for us to use as a community. Like you said, people don't like to be interrupted on their way to work running into a paving truck. So it would be awesome for us, because I know a lot of us communicate with our residents on social media, like you said, but that doesn't capture everybody. So to have this tool to be able to get notifications out to people about important events or issues, I think is so valuable. So can you tell us a little bit, like what's the best way for us to get people to opt in? I know that I've been getting that information out to people saying, dial, text, Homewood info to this number. But what is the most valuable way that you think to get people to opt into this system? Because there is such a wealth of information that they
I would
can get.
include this in everything the city does, any printed material that you have.
Okay.
Any kind of announcements, for more information, text in HWD info to 888-777.
Yeah.
Every which way you can push it out to the public.
Okay.
One way we learn about this is some of the largest users in this country, Walt Disney World.
Yeah.
Is one of the, okay, they are experts at communicating with their visitors. And this is how they do it, is the same system that you've got. So
I think we did, I'll have to go back and check, but I do believe when we went live with it, that I sent it to the Chamber and the Homewood Star, and I think Brian Wallace had it on the website. I do know the other day when I did a call for poll workers, there's people listening, because I immediately started getting flooded with emails, so. But I was going to get with Jim St. John to see how we can find out how many people are on it. But, when I keyed a few things, I think that nobody's listening. But then when I did the poll work, I started just getting email after email saying, I'd like to do it, I'd like to do it, I'd like to do it.
Right. Is there a way to get
Yes,
specific
the,
information about how many Homewood residents have opted in?
when you look at the keyword, that is anonymous. It's voluntary. But we can track how the numbers are, so we can watch a climb. A couple of years ago, when Hurricane Michael was heading toward Alabama, and the Alabama EMA did not have access to anything. We're still waiting on the state system. So we called Everbridge and we said, we got a hurricane coming to Alabama. Can we allow them to use it for the life of the storm? And they said yes, and we had them up in about an hour. And they had 90,000 people opt in the first 24 hours. A lot of these people were residents of Florida who were fleeing and looking for shelter. Residents of South Alabama. Where do I go? So it's get the word out. It's push it on social media. It's like you're saying, just push it out on city.
But he did make me so nervous about that buddy you broadcast, and once you get something out there, it's out there. You can't get it back. So there's a function where you can actually let it speak to you before you send the text, even though it's not a speech text, but you can hear what you type. So I listened about 3 times before I hit send now, because I'm like, there's no recall.
No. Does anybody on the committee have a question for Mr. Coker?
I did. I was going to ask, where is it living right now? Like, who in the city has access to, the things like the road closures, or is it living with the clerk's office, or, I know Brian's put it on our website. Brandon, does it live with Brandon?
Right now, for the external public 888-777, we're only using the HWD info, but we have the capabilities later to roll out other keywords. Like if library wants to have a keyword, I've talked to Debbie about that. But right now, I'm basically driving it, and Berkeley's going to send me road closings for me to put on there. But we may end up branching out with a couple other keywords where Berkeley might have his own person do something like for park. But they already use social media, but I got to get with St. John that works with the EMA to see how they can tie in. So like if Berkeley uses it for the park, it could just go straight to their social media. Right now, Brian Wallace is copying the 8877 HWD info and putting it out to Twitter, but we're going to talk to them about getting the interface so he'll quit. There is a way for it to speak to each other without him having to copy it over.
Yeah, there is a way to link your Twitter and Facebook accounts to the keyword. So you send it out one time and it hits everything. You don't have to keep doing it over and over.
Well, but we wanted to get the HWD info out first and see how that's using, so we could get information about election, to people. And Berkeley said he'd send me the road closures, but it may evolve into something where Debbie has her keyword so if you want to text this number to get library information, or text this number to get park information, as opposed to just HWD info. But right now, that's the only one that's live.
But, I mean, I think that having that overarching, having that overarching Homewood info place where things land, because, I mean, that's anything. I mean, that's weather, that's street closures, that's a tree falling, that's whatever there might be, kind of all falls under that. So I think it's great. But I do think sometimes if you start asking people to do more and more and more and more, it gets harder and harder to capture them, and I don't know if you would agree with that being true, but, you know, somebody might be willing to text the number once, but they might not be willing to text the number 5 times to 5 different places. So something about having that big umbrella
And it
is
maybe,
nice.
maybe I just work like Berkeley says, somebody sends it to, right now it's me that's driving it, or, you know, then we just may put something out about something the library's doing. But I know, somebody was telling me that even though, you know, Facebook, Twitter and all that's great, but that this coming to your phone, that people really like that. And I actually had it at UAB. It's called B Alerts. That's how they communicate with you as a student. And I didn't know that was part of the system.
Same system.
But yeah,
Same
but so they were saying that even though you use Facebook, Twitter, and all that, that the people like the fact that it's just a text that comes to their phone, and they can hit stop at any time, and it will quit bugging you. If you want to hit stop, you won't get a text anymore.
Yes, I want to make one comment. I think one thing we should consider for this is maybe some sort of program in the budget, maybe allocate a couple $1,000s this coming year so we can maybe promote it by putting out signage in parks and the library, and, you know, maybe on anything we send out via the city. But also, Lieutenant Broadhead and I were talking before the meeting about the system, because he's the admin for it and was excited about it and the rollout. But generating a QR code, so if you're in the park, you can just pull your camera up on your phone, quickly scan it, and you're in. It just simplifies the process, and we can generate that code pretty easily. So.
You know, one thing I meant to also tell you is, even though the system covers all the cities in the county, you can't see what other cities are doing.
Right.
They're partitions, and they can't see what you're doing.
Right.
But if you want to be sneaky, you can sign up for Mountain Brooks Alerts.
Get all their alerts.
Sure. It's actually a good way to learn and see how things are being pushed out.
Yeah.
So.
Patrick,
I just have one question. This was my agenda item, and that's when Melly and I first started talking about it. This is all information out, correct? No information in. Okay. Is there a capability of that possibly in the future? Do you know anything about? I'm just curious.
I think it could probably do it, but it costs more money than we've got.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
You know,
yeah.
budgets are budgets.
Yeah.
So,
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, hey, that's Berkeley. You know.
One thing we've done at
somewhere, don't
EMA. One thing we've done at EMA is we established like a very generic email address, EMA info, and we publicize that on everything we do.
Yep.
So if you have a tree down or anything,
Yep.
it hits all of our employees, and we'll catch it.
Yep.
And then if we need to email it forward to somebody, we will.
Okay.
And that doesn't cost anything. So
That is
we're
awesome.
kind of cheap like that.
Yeah.
No,
Well, we
you're good
appreciate it.
stewards
Thank you.
Of
That's
your
right.
budget. That's
It's
a
your
good
money.
thing. Thank you so much, Mr. Coker. We sure appreciate you coming in and sharing all this information with us. I think it's really valuable. I think it'll be valuable to our citizens. So we appreciate you taking the time, and we're sorry we kept you out so late.
Not a problem at all.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you do not have to stay for the rest of the meeting. You are free to go.
Thank you, Jim. I'll bring you cornbread next time. This is being recorded.
Yep, we've got the proof. We've got the proof. Okay, I don't know, I don't think there's a motion necessarily for this.
No, I don't think there is. I mean, I think the information just coming to us and letting us hear it and exactly what it can do and what we can do moving forward. And I think now that I believe Melody said she's the one that's kind of in charge of it at the moment.
Yeah, it's still going to be an evolving process as we roll it out
Sure.
in phases. It was kind of just first get it out there, especially
Yep.
around July 4th with the COVID situation too, trying to keep people
Informed.
alert. So it's like, we kind of hurried, got that part out there, and
Yeah.
then we may end up evolving into something different, but more as we use it more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I don't mind making the motion to just drop it.
I would like to thank you for bringing it to the agenda, though, and bringing it to our attention.
All right, so I have a motion from Mr. McCluskey to drop this item. Second from Mr. Gwaltney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that's 5-0 to drop it. Thank you, Mr. Coker. We appreciate you. Okay, let's see. Anybody here for the sidewalks, the tables and the sidewalks? Greg, is anybody here for that? Oh, yes, okay. We'll go ahead and do that then, too. All right, 030620, request permission to place tables on the city sidewalk at 2801 18th Street South for the Maple Street Biscuit Company, Chris Sears and Greg Cobb. I sent out the drawing that Mr. Cobb gave to us tonight. I sent that out to the members of the committee earlier this week. And I know there were a couple, I think Mr. Waltney was going to take care of getting that sent over to our contractors at GMC to see if, you know, in comparison with the plan that we have for that part of the street and the part of the sidewalk, they wanted to make sure that those things jibed.
Okay.
So why don't you tell us what you're looking to do, and then we will discuss.
Okay, we're looking to put, let me pull it up, I'm sorry.
10, I think.
You need this?
6 tables.
Could you say your name for the record, please?
Stephanie Ram.
4 4-seaters, 2 2-seaters.
Stephanie?
6
Ram.
total.
Okay.
Oh, I see. I was counting those 2 tables.
I mean.
Yeah, 6 tables
good.
total.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And this is right out in front of y'all's business?
It is.
On the new wider section of that sidewalk,
Yes, ma'am.
correct? Okay.
So the update from the engineering firm, GMC, they basically asked that we hold off until construction is complete for liability issues, but also that would give them a chance to get it in, you know, double check, you know, access, basically go out there and lay it out essentially. So they did ask that we carry this over until the construction is complete, and then we can assess it then.
Okay. I know that probably is disappointing, because I'm sure y'all would rather get those tables out there, but until we complete that project, first of all, there is
Okay.
probably a liability issue, because, you know, we have cones and people and workmen
Yes.
and everything, and traffic is kind of wonky.
Do we
at the
have
moment.
a game plan on when that might be done? Because that is affecting our front door as well.
Oh, yeah.
So just
I don't know.
curious.
Do we have a
Well, when I was
timeline?
up there today, they've completed about 75% of the brickwork there, and they should complete the rest of it. I think Keith said within the next like 2 to 3 weeks. The project as a whole won't be done for a while, but in front of your place should be within 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay.
If not sooner, but I'll follow up and get a timeline. If you can give me your info, I'll be glad to reach out to you and let you know when that's going to be done. But they did have their crews work quickly over the weekend, I think it was 2 weekends ago, to kind of restore some sense of normalcy over there. So sorry for the impacts.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I had a quick question. Maybe I missed this from the previous proposal, but why are the tables not against the building? What, was there, I'm trying to figure out, wouldn't you have more room and?
You would block the sidewalk.
You would
if
block
were
the
against
sidewalk
building.
and the access to the crosswalk, which is going to be there.
So there's 6, okay, so there's 6 feet from your building to where the tables are going, or maybe
Yeah,
I'm reading this wrong?
Because you know that they've created a bulb out right there, so it's a larger space now than it used to be. So they're asking to put the tables in that section that's not right on the sidewalk, so that they won't block the
Okay.
sidewalk access.
And that is right away, right? It's right away, right?
Yes.
I just wish we had designed it like Edgewood, where you can put tables right next to your building. It just seems like that would be, but it's already been.
Well, the sidewalk to do that would have to jog out into the street.
You can walk, you got the sidewalk at Mantu, right before that other.
Yeah, there's some tables that are right against the,
Well, I
you know,
think the
businesses in
businesses that have
Edgewood.
tables like O'Henry's and Mama Goldberg's.
Yeah.
Mama Goldberg's are inset, and for the most part, I think those stores are set back a little bit further, whereas Holler and Dash is right up against the right-of-way.
Right.
So
Right.
you would be
Okay.
literally, you know, impeding ADA access and the sidewalk, so.
Okay, thank you.
So unfortunately, we can't give you a decision tonight, but
Okay.
we will carry it over and communicate with Mr. Ball.
Yeah.
Okay.
On that, that project and how it gets done, and we'll carry this over until that time.
Okay.
And we'll get back to you.
All right, thank y'all.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate it. I'm sorry
I
to
do
take
have a
you away.
copy. I didn't know if you got one. Yeah, I'll get that one, yep.
Okay, let's go back up to the top. Oh, actually, you know what? We'll do 070720, request to set a public hearing and referral to the Special Issues Committee to allow one section of an 8-foot fence to extend to 10 feet in height to create a symmetrical privacy screen from the elementary school, Shades Cahaba Elementary School carpool line at 322 Grand Avenue, Brian Wallace, White, Pew. Mr. Wallace, you want to come out and join us for a minute?
Sure.
He's going to man the store.
Yeah, Andy's our only capable technology person.
And Ms. Smith, the public hearing's been set too, we didn't change the title, it's been set already.
Yeah, yes, right. It's
We
been-
usually change the wording on the agenda until it's been set.
No big deal.
I'd love to go play grandma.
That's the fun stuff
I
right
can
there.
pull it up at some point.
I would
If you guys have
request-
questions, and then I can go back there and actually.
I would request no close-ups during this period of time, please.
Any
Yeah,
questions?
tell us what you're planning on doing and kind of explain it to them. I've seen the picture, so I know.
So essentially, the back of our property backs up to Shades Cahaba. And literally right where the middle of our deck is the carpool line. It's been fine for years. Part of the issue now is that our fence that's on the back, it goes down, and at the bottom, it's about 5 feet. It has to be replaced. It's gotten very old. It's falling apart at certain points. So in the process of looking at rebuilding it, we didn't want another slant. We wanted the ability to go straight across, just for one, so it would look a little bit better, but two, to have a little bit of privacy. You may or may not know that the field has become quite popular during COVID-19, and the crowds are a lot. And while we love talking to our neighbors, it would be nice at times to be able to have some of that. So here's the thing, I don't want to go 10 feet. I really don't, because it may even look awkward, but the problem is to keep it straight, we're going to get close to 10 feet in about a 5-foot space. I'm going to try to keep it below that, but that's what this is. It's not necessarily a hardship, and even if you guys said no, that's fine. I'll still probably try to make it straight. There's just one area where it's going to be a little bit taller. So it's level at the top. Basically, I was going to start at this point and go like this. And at one end on the right, it'll probably be about 6 feet, maybe a little bit below. Comes out to about 8 feet. Then it's where it really dips down, because at the back of our property is enormous storm drain.
Yeah.
It has eroded out. And it's great. It's actually good that it has, because it lets the water flow. But because of that, it really dips down at the bottom. And so it's either go in steps, which we don't want to do, go slanted again, which, again, these are all options. We're not sold on any one or the other, but we would like to be able to go straight across. And if we did, then that one portion is going to be really tall.
You want to go back and put the picture up so we can see it?
Let me do that, and I can actually talk to you.
So basically, he's averaging 8 feet. I mean, it's an average of 8 feet across.
Average it out. If you
Yeah.
average it out. Yeah, and I've seen the picture, and basically he's right, like their yard just kind
It
of
does.
comes down.
Yeah.
So that one section in the middle where the dip is
So-
where it would be taller.
So if you look, this is the property. If you didn't know, that's literally basically where the fence is. Of course, this is the carpool line. That's the house. This is looking toward it now from the back. That's the carpool line, and that's the field. This is what's there now. And it's really falling apart down in this area from just the water and the erosion. It needs to be fixed. And essentially that is what I was looking at trying to do. Again, this area in here, I really don't want to go that high. And so it's 10 feet was more of an estimate, but that was going to make sure that we could reach that. But it's probably going to be more around 9.5, somewhere around in here. And then as it comes back, it's going to probably be somewhere around 6 feet, maybe slightly under right here. But you get the idea. We wanted to just be able to try to go straight across, if that makes sense. Over here, our neighbor here, Carrie, I've already talked with her about it. She doesn't mind because I was concerned that this drop, she was fine with it. And Patsy on my other side, hers is actually very tall. She actually has a variance. I think she has this one over here, I think is 10 feet. And so the back is 8 feet anyway, so it shouldn't be too bad on this other side.
Okay, so, and Brian, so that one section over on the left, that's the
Yes.
section you're talking about?
Yeah,
You said
this
it's about a
base-
5-foot section?
Yeah, and it's basically from about, because it's actually 8 feet to about right here.
Yeah.
And then it would be yeah, somewhere between 9 foot 4 inches up to 9 foot 8 inches, somewhere around in there. The thought was to come to here and then drop down, which we can still do. So if it stays at 8 feet and needs to stay at 8 feet, we can come to right here and then just drop down a section. We just really wanted to be able to have some symmetry with it and have it straight across. But we also know that it backs up to the school, so we don't want it to be ugly. We don't want it, to be massive.
All right, does anybody on the committee or council have a question for Mr. Wallace? Mr.
I
Wright?
have one thing. So really, his, what's the standard we're looking for?
Topography.
I'm sorry, I've just lost, I just had a blank. No, the issue for, to be justified for a variance.
It's a hardship due to topography.
Thank you, hardship. Your hardship, Mr. Bryan, is,
Topography.
Yes, the
No.
topography and the location.
and the location and the public.
If you look,
Well, you need to,
if you look right here, this is where most people park now. They park right here, but this is also the carpool line. It comes right here.
Yeah.
So the cars come right around through here. So you could also say exhaust if you really wanted to, that sits there for quite a long time, of course. But the main thing right here is the erosion that's taking place down on the bottom, and then the amount of traffic that we now have that comes through that area.
and the point being is that you do need a hardship, so I think you have one. I just want to make sure you have one.
Brian, can you send me that?
Yes, sir. I can.
Okay. If no one else has questions, can I get a motion?
I move to approve.
Actually, it'd be a motion to send it out without recommendation.
Oh,
pending public
sorry,
hearing.
I moved to send out without recommendation pending public hearing.
Yes, motion, okay. Motion from Ms. Andrus and a second from Mr. Gwaltney, who is enjoying his dessert down there or something. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 5-0, that passes. And so, Brian, your public hearing will be on next Monday night at 6 o'clock.
Thank you.
Right? Isn't that right, the 27th? Yes. Yeah. Okay. Back up to the top. 171015, request for consideration of noise and odor problems for Buffalo Rock and Mayfield Barbers. As y'all might imagine, I'm still dealing with that, and I spend my weekend getting texts from people, and today, yes, today. Actually, that was today. That was advance notice of something, which is actually nice. I like to get advance notice as opposed to after complaint notice. So that is still in the works, and I will report back to y'all when I have something. We are trying to set a meeting with the Jeffco sewer folks to discuss the fact that the sewer project that they told us they were going to do this year is now not going to happen until 2023. So we're trying to set a meeting with them to see what we can get accomplished with them. All right, so that's carried over. And 170220, request to address trash pickup concerns and requirements for downtown business properties. Tim Hans is President Wright. Anything on this? Anything for us?
Berkeley and I are working on it. Berkeley's going to have this all fixed up for us in a few weeks or months. Seriously, we are looking at a number of different options in different jurisdictions and how they're addressing really a little hole we have in our garbage retrieval process. And so we're going to look at that a little more closely. And in a few weeks, I don't know if it's going to be 30 days, something like that, we will hopefully come back with a proposal for everyone to consider, chew on, amend, or whatever. Okay? Thank you.
All right, well, then we'll carry that over, and with that, we are adjourned.